Chapter 2871. In reality, the young couple had already chosen the mining team. The Crown Prince had already made proper arrangements for the talents in ore selection and smelting. If they chose a portion of the Hidden Night Pavilion members with a cultivation base to mine naturally, things would progress at a faster pace. But now, the young Crown Princess mobilized a portion of ordinary people to mine. Presumably, progress wouldn't be too fast for such a large Chess Mountain spirit mine. However, by doing this, the Crown Princess really did resolve a headache for the capital magistrate. Aunt Jing curled her lips and suppressed the smile bubbling up from the bottom of her heart. Who said that the little stoic Crown Princess was someone who didn't understand the ways of the world? Her returning the favor would definitely make stubborn Chow burst with joy. Crown Princess, when do you plan to leave? The young Crown Princess pursed her lips. Don't think she was stupid. When Eunuch Hu came to deliver the compensation, he asked her a few questions in a roundabout way, all of which were about when she would scram. It was definitely Mo Lian's father who didn't like her and didn't want to see her. He wanted her to scram as soon as possible. I'll leave right away, the young Crown Princess said as she stood up. How rare. Did he think she was willing to stay in the imperial capital? Her husband wasn't here, so she wasn't willing to stay a moment longer. Her husband was still hoping for a reunion with Sir Jojo, humph. The little fellow walked out briskly. I'll leave after taking a look at Saishio. After a night of rest, Saishio's injuries had recovered a lot. Xiao Mu headed to the Kaidai Pavilion to instruct Saishio and Saichi. She also left behind some sacred rice, spiritual vegetables, and fruits for shopkeeper who was beside himself with joy. She said to him, in a few days, a person with good handwriting will come to work. At that time, have him write the menu and draw the recipe. Manager whose mouth twitched, and he nodded repeatedly. Yes, yes. Don't worry, Crown Princess. This lowly one will carefully observe that Zhang family brat. Emichim, Arbor responded expressionlessly. Before he left, he said, put the Emperor on the blacklist. Everyone fell to the ground. When Arbor went out, he happened to hear the shopkeeper's head hit the door frame, making a very dull, dong sound. She pursed her lips and said to Eunuch Qin, whose eyes were twitching, Mo Luxing is very stingy, not at all like his elder brother Prince Kong. Wasn't it just 5,000 spirit coins from him? Why did he look so eager as if he couldn't wait for her to never return to the imperial capital? How petty! Unlike Prince Kong, who gave her the entire Half-Moon Cliff and the entire Hot Spring Villa. After fiercely ridiculing the great emperor in his heart, Arbor sent a message to Wei Feng, telling him to stay here and finish the recruitment for Chess Mountain Spirit Mine before returning to north-facing Great Forest. Arbor summoned Qing Yuan and flew out of the city. She planned to fly for a while and calculate the distance before using the teleportation array. At that time, maybe after a few teleportations, she would be directly teleported to somewhere near the academy. Arbor thought to himself. Not long after they left the sovereign capital, they sensed the presence of powerful enemies. What was going on? As if in response to her keen senses, an arrow pierced through the air and arrived behind her in an instant, accompanied by a series of whistling sounds. The instant the little stoic's face darkened, she pressed down on Qing Yuan's large head. Qing Yuan dodged that sharp arrow with a whoosh and flew up high. There was still time, wait. Chapter 2872. 7 or 8 men of sacrifice in black suddenly rushed out from the outskirts, their eagle-like eyes fixed on Miss Xiao. Although Jojo was a little surprised, at least she didn't look surprised at all. She didn't waste time talking to them at all. She directly shot out several flying needles, scattering them towards the people around her like a fairy scattering flowers. Jojo didn't even bother to ask stupid questions like, "Who are you? Who cares who they are?" Since they came to kill her, she should be prepared to face death. Arbor's attack was swift and fierce. After a round of flying needles, she instantly drew out hundreds of talismans from her inner world, and without saying anything, she smashed them towards the men in black in front of her. The men of sacrifice in black were smashed by the 5 spirit talismans. Although a few of them managed to dodge in time, they only moved their bodies a little. But 2 of them were wrapped in several thunder spirit talismans, and were solidly struck by lightning. Their faces darkened as they fell to the ground, paralyzed. Arbor's fighting spirit was completely aroused by them. Everyone only saw a little girl with a paralyzed face fly down from the back of the blue phoenix, and with a flash of a bright long sword in her hand, the sword light attacked their necks. Dense murderous intent approached. A large copper net appeared in the hands of 2 of the men of sacrifice, and the 2 of them worked together to wrap Arbor's head. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Mu flew up and delivered a spinning kick, landing squarely on the man's chest. The unlucky man was kicked out by her, and then fell heavily to the ground. The startled swan dagger in Arbor's conscience jumped out with a whoosh, and with lightning speed, it quickly slit a man's neck. Just like that, in less than 5 minutes of fighting, one of their companions died right in front of them. Although they were men of sacrifice for their master, who would want to die when there was a chance to live. But today, the order from the top was to drag the little girl to death even if he had to drag it out. So none of them could back down, and they had to continue. Even if this girl's methods were swift and fierce, and she wasn't an easy bone to chew. Get out of the way. A deep voice came from the back of the crowd. The crowd parted in an instant, allowing an ordinary-looking middle-aged man to dash in front of Arbor. The man didn't say anything and directly shot a shuttle towards Arbor's face. His method was especially vicious. She wanted to kill her and ruin her face at the same time. Xiao Mu sneered, and she shot out an icicle with a backhand to block his attack. The startled swan dagger spun around the middle-aged man at a speed comparable to light before landing in her hand with a whoosh. A line of blood appeared on the man's arm. On the other hand, a hidden weapon had left a white mark on the back of his hand. How dare he hurt her? Arbor's heart was filled with anger. He reached out his hand to hold down the little white snake that was about to move and said in his heart, "Don't move." She wanted to personally deal with this person who dared to hurt her. Arbor's eyes flashed with a fierce light as he flew forward. The startled swan dagger spun rapidly and stabbed towards the middle-aged man. Ha! The middle-aged man's eyes revealed a mocking smile. He waved his hand and set up a spiritual barrier, easily blocking the startled swan dagger's attack. The startled swan dagger stabbed into the spiritual barrier in front of the man. Even if her spiritual energy surged, it still couldn't pierce through this person's spiritual barrier. Clearly, this person's defensive power was above hers, and his cultivation realm was definitely much higher than hers. Chapter 2873. The middle-aged man evidently didn't expect that this little crown princess, who came from the lower star domain, would be so difficult to deal with. When he accepted this mission back then, he had promised the family head that he would definitely take this stoic-faced little girl's head and help his family head vent this resentment. Viciousness flashed through the man's eyes, and he sneered, "It's useless to struggle on your deathbed. Perhaps you'll suffer less if you obediently accept your death. Are you talking about yourself?" A bunch of icicles abruptly fell from Arbor's fingertips onto the middle-aged man. However, the middle-aged man's spiritual aura shield's defense was quite strong, so he really couldn't break it completely for the time being. The situation was in a bit of a deadlock. The middle-aged man suddenly smiled at her with a contorted expression. Form the formation. The 7 to 8 people who had scattered gathered together again in a split second and formed a formation with both attack and defense around the little stoic. As soon as this formation was activated, the little fellow felt her vision blur slightly, and several gleaming swords stabbed at her left ribs. The little fellow flew up and kicked one of the swords. Immediately, everything in front of her turned into a series of illusory bubbles and disappeared in front of her. Pfft! The man in black closest to her suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. They probably didn't expect the little stoic to find a way to break through the illusions at the first instant and break their impregnable formation in an instant. The middle-aged man brandished a black, barbed whip in his hand and abruptly lashed it at Xiao Mu. Slap! That whip struck a person next to him, infuriating the middle-aged man so much that his eyebrows, eyes, and nose were all twisted together. Everyone attacked together. Master has ordered, kill. The middle-aged man couldn't help but be enraged when he saw that they hadn't taken down the little stoic after so long while their side had lost several people in succession. Following his shout, they released several contracted beasts. They circled Arbor in a circle of various sizes, eyeing him covetously. The ferocious beasts pounced up and down, and the black-clothed men's swords struck even faster. Arbor's fingers moved, and he could only continuously throw out talismans to block their attacks. In the blink of an eye, that whip darted out from a crafty angle and landed on Xiao Mu's arm with a smack. It instantly numbed her entire arm, and her left hand involuntarily drooped down. Damn it, it was so painful that her entire body trembled slightly. The little fellow was so angry that she was trembling. She was suppressed by the array and couldn't move much. The middle-aged man took advantage of this opportunity to whip her. Not only that, the whip wrapped around her arm did not come down, and the barbs all pierced into her skin. Although the poison smeared on it was not enough to cause her much discomfort, she had never suffered such a great loss in so many years, so she must be very angry. The more this was the case, the more she wanted to use her own battle prowess to deal with this person before her. She's dying. The middle-aged man was very confident in the medicine on his whip. When he saw that Arbor was hit, he couldn't help but exclaim in joy. You're dead for sure. Arbor stuffed a pill into her mouth with an icy expression. A talisman emitting a purple glow appeared on the tip of her right hand. The middle-aged man thought his eyes were playing tricks on him at first, but then he couldn't help but exclaim, "Purple talisman." Chapter 2874. A purple shadow flashed past, and an 8 trigrams formation seemed to appear in front of her, firmly binding this middle-aged man within. Supreme Grade Purple Talisman, the Earth Rank 8 trigrams binding talisman. Its effects were marvelous. Once it was activated, anyone below the god realm would inevitably be affected. Boss! Amidst everyone's astonishment, they saw the little stoic charge in front of their boss like a cannonball and land a punch on his face. The man was bound by the 8 trigrams binding talisman, so he naturally couldn't move in the slightest. This punch landed solidly on his face without any obstruction. Everyone could clearly hear the man's bones breaking with a crack. The bridge of his nose was broken, and the punch even caused this middle-aged man's entire face to cave in a bit. The little girl's move instantly made everyone's hair stand on end. Swish! A shadow flashed past, and they discovered that they had rolled out of a dazzlingly bright light screen. At the same time, the startled swan dagger flashed past, taking the life of one of the black-clothed kamikaze soldiers. Fast and precise. Arbor pursed her thin lips and lifted her small hand, expressionlessly touching the blood that was faintly seeping out of her arm. Naive. She coldly uttered this word. Suddenly, her expression changed slightly. The 2 black-clothed kamikaze soldiers in front of her didn't hesitate in the slightest and promptly self-destructed in front of her. The light from the self-destruction rushed over. Because the distance was very close, even though Arbor had set up a defensive barrier and countless defensive talisman matrices with a wave of her hand, she still couldn't resist these 2 terrifying forces. After all, these 2 kamikaze soldiers had cultivations above level 10 spiritual masters. As a result, she was unavoidably flung flying, and her internal organs suffered a certain degree of pressure. Cough, cough. A trace of blood seeped out of the corner of Arbor's lips. She was very clear that her internal organs had been damaged. The more furious she was, the colder and more emotionless her eyes became. His eyes were filled with killing intent. No one is to come out and help me. Her words were so calm that they were almost callous, instantly stopping the saplings, Cho-Cho, and the others from jumping out. Master Silver was silently enraged. Purple talismans, purple talismans, purple talismans. Around the little girl's body, purple talismans slowly flashed and floated up one by one. After a flash of purple light, the Vajra talisman attached itself to her hand. Arbor's expression was extremely cold. Die! She pounced on him, her small jade-like hand, which had the Vajra talisman attached to it, coldly hammered his chest. Several of his ribs were instantly broken. The ribs were inserted into the man's heart and lungs in a contorted manner. Large amounts of blood flowed out. However, there was not the slightest bit of humanity in her eyes. Kill him. At this moment, these words were echoing in her mind. It was as if she had gone mad and had fallen into a demonic nightmare. Jojo. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal suddenly appeared beside her and reached out to grab her. However, he grabbed nothing but air. A vicious glint flashed in her eyes, and she immediately dragged that person into the teleportation array. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal had no choice but to follow the talisman array. With a whoosh, Arbor dragged that middle-aged man and teleported countless times, directly to the sky above the academy. After passing through the academy's great defensive array, Arbor actually did not know where she had been teleported to. Her eyes could only see blood. She stepped on that person and suddenly fell from the sky. With a bang, she smashed into something. Fragments flew everywhere. The 8th watch ended. Chapter 2875. After listening to Cho-Cho's recount, Mo Lien was stunned when she learned that the little fellow had been shaken by the impact of the 2 self-detonations. Suddenly, he had the impulse to carry this little girl over and examine her carefully from head to toe. Was the self-detonation a joke? No wonder the little fellow's internal organs were injured and she vomited blood. This arrogant little thing. If not for the fact that she was still in a deep sleep, she would have dragged her out and given her a good beating. How could she be so willful and reckless? She could have chosen to let others help her, right? On second thought, this was the little fellow's personality. She would become stronger when faced with a strong opponent and would never back down. She had always been so proud and aloof. Mo Lien was silent for a long time. Then, she turned to look at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who was beside the bed. Qi Xianxian stayed by Arbor's side to take care of her. The rest followed Mo Lien out. He-Chen followed beside her. As they walked out, he frowned and said, I think there might be something wrong with the little girl's state of mind at certain times. Mo Lien stopped in her tracks. Little Fatty and the rest stopped as well. Their burning gazes landed on the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. He-Chen looked at them. In the beginning, when the little fellow was surrounded by a few kamikaze warriors, she behaved very normally. He-Chen recalled and said with a heavy expression, until the leader of the kamikaze warriors you saw in the dining hall appeared, she was still trying her best to fight with those kamikaze warriors. From the moment the leader of the kamikaze warriors left a white mark on her hand, the little fellow became a little crazy. Yes, a little crazy. From the moment she was surrounded by an array to the moment she tried all ways to break out of the array, her vicious aura began to boil to the extreme. That middle-aged leader used a whip to hit her arm. After she broke free, she was surrounded by countless spirit beasts. Even now, she doesn't let us help her. Why is that? When he heard Chio's summary, Mo Lien could still accept it. Now that he heard the details from the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, Prince Mo became more and more alarmed. It was actually so dangerous. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was right. Why did she not allow anyone to help her in such a dangerous situation? That was because at that time, she had completely fallen into a state where she had no friends, no relatives, no one. In her eyes, in the world, and even in her heart, there was no one else. The only thing left was the conviction to kill the other party. Until she was blasted away by someone's self-detonation, this little fellow had completely lost her mind. Ji-Chen said with a heavy expression, "I didn't even have time to catch her. You don't know how many purple talismans she threw out back then. She probably used up all of her offensive and supportive purple talismans. Have you all realized that JoJo has a twisted attitude towards getting injured?" The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal pointed out sharply. Everyone's heart trembled slightly. He couldn't help but recall the bits and pieces of their interactions. This was especially true for Prince Mo. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's analysis had brought back a series of memories. He recalled that when they met at the Kwoto village market, the hyena that Lu Yexin had released had left 3 bloody scratches on the little girl. How had she dealt with it? She had killed that hyena. Using a cruel method, she had cut open its stomach and left 6 deep bloody scratches on its body. There was also the 3-sect competition in Shisha Valley. Chapter 2876. When the little fellow met the masked Hui En, a white mark appeared on the back of her hand because of Hui En's sudden attack. Hui En was sent flying by his kick on the spot. She was in so much pain that she could not get up. But the little fellow was obviously not satisfied with such an outcome. In the end, she still insisted that Hui En leave her hand behind. At that time, he only thought that the little fellow did this because she was furious. After all, she usually treated those who liked to jump up and down to provoke her as idiots. Now it seemed that he still did not know her well enough. This little thing seemed to have an almost obsessive pursuit of perfection towards every inch of her skin. She would not allow anyone to harm any inch of her skin. Even if it was just a scratch on the back of her hand, she would not allow it. In other words, no matter how you provoked her verbally, once or twice, she might treat you as an idiot and ignore you. By the 3rd time, she might not be able to bear it and send you flying. But if you hurt her skin, she would completely turn into a demon and fight you to the death. Mo Lien and Ji-Chen silently met each other's eyes, and they both saw the deep worry in each other's eyes. To put it in a deeper way, the little fellow's state was that there was a demon in her heart. It was very disadvantageous for her to go through the 5 spirits reincarnation test when she ascended to the immortal state in the future. East of Dragon Flame City, Qin Estate. Qin Hong was trimming a unique herb in the greenhouse. When he heard footsteps hurriedly coming from behind, he did not turn his head and just said with a cold expression, "Is everything done?" "It failed, master." Qin Hong's originally steady hand was slightly crooked. With a snap, he directly cut off half of the graceful herb with a pair of scissors. The middle of the herb was cut off, and the roots quickly withered. In less than a second, the herb turned into withered branches and withered leaves and drooped down. Qin Hong stared at the scissors in his hand with a pained expression, wishing that he could smash a hole in the person's head. Looking at his master's terrifying expression, the middle-aged man who came to report the news trembled slightly. His eyes trembled slightly, and he immediately lowered his head. Qin Hong threw the scissors on the ground with a bang. Trying to control his anger, he asked in a low voice, "What happened?" "Master, Bingba's life lantern suddenly shattered." "What?" Qin Hong could not believe his ears. He hurriedly lifted his robe and said, "Take me there." Qin Chao was family head Qin's right-hand man, so he understood family head Qin's intentions very well. Hearing family head Qin's words, he hurriedly led family head Qin to the small temple where the elite death warriors' life lanterns were enshrined. The two of them hurriedly walked in and saw that there were 4 to 5 rows of life lamps in the small Buddha hole. They were swaying in a special transparent container. The third life lamp in the last row had completely disappeared. The corners of Qin Hong's mouth drooped. His shrewd old eyes were filled with doubt and confusion. What message did the life lantern miniature receive? Zithergrass waved his hand, and the scene in the life lamp miniature jumped out. However, the life lantern miniature could only intercept a small portion of information, so the two of them could only watch in trepidation as the little stoic in the projection stared at Bingba as if she was looking at a dead person and punched Bingba's cheek so hard that it caved in. "What kind of power is this?" Qin Hong exclaimed. Qin Grass couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. Chapter 2877. Originally, he was planning to personally lead a team to exterminate this little stoic girl. Later, he thought that the other party was the crown princess of the divine province after all. If he personally led a team to look for trouble, it would be fine if they didn't investigate, but once they did, he would also be implicated. At that time, perhaps the family head would push him out to be the scapegoat to protect the family clan. Hence, he didn't wade into this muddy water and had Bingba lead a dozen kamikaze soldiers to surround the little stoic. Now that he thought about it, it was truly fortunate that he didn't go. Otherwise, who the hell knew if he could withstand the little stoic's powerful punch? The two of them didn't see the subsequent scene of the little stoic flinging out countless purple talismans from the life lamp miniature. However, the punch that caved in Bingba's cheekbone already made them extremely shocked and gloomy. "Why is it like this?" Qin Hong muttered to himself. Then, as if a divine light flashed in his mind, he cried out in surprise, I didn't expect that after eating rice for so many years and walking so many paths, I would actually be deceived by this little girl. She isn't the weak little level 3 spiritual master she looks like. She definitely isn't." Qin Mu shouted angrily. This little brat really deceived everyone so bitterly. Qin Mu carefully thought about it. Indeed, the power of that little girl's punch that appeared in the life lamp miniature just now was able to cave in the cheekbone of a level 15 great spiritual master like Bingba. Evidently, her strength was about the same as Bingba's. She's a level 15 great spiritual master. Qin Hong roared angrily and smashed his fist on the wooden pillar beside him. That darn brat, we were deceived by her. She must have some magic treasure that conceals her aura or a talisman that lowers her cultivation realm. If he had known earlier that this damn brat was a leveled 15 great spiritual master, he definitely wouldn't have just sent Bingba, a leveled 15 great spiritual master, to deal with her. Thinking about it, if he sent so many kamikaze soldiers after a mere level 3 spiritual master, they should have been able to take her head, right? However, they didn't. The more Qin Hong thought about it, the angrier he became. His fingers clenched so tightly that they made cracking sounds. "Despicable," Qin Mu said angrily. After being surrounded by kamikaze soldiers this time, the little stoic would definitely be more cautious. It might be difficult to find an opportunity to intercept and kill her when she was alone. "Patriarch." At this moment, Qin Grass interrupted him with a trembling voice. He bent over and handed over a communication jade talisman. "Yes, young master sent a message." Qin Hong's face was cold. He took the communication jade amulet and glanced at it. He was so angry that he smashed the communication jade amulet on the ground. Damn it, what was going on with this little stoic? Even if he could fly, it was impossible for him to reach the Royal Academy from the Imperial capital so quickly. But now, Xian had sent him a message asking him what was going on. It was obvious that she knew what he had done. Xian also warned him not to act again, and forbade him from sending any more men to deal with Arbor. Yes, it was a warning, it was an angry reprimand. He could imagine his son, who had always been calm and composed, flying into a rage in the royal school. To be honest, Qin Hong was in a very bad mood after giving his son such a warning. Why did he do so much? Wasn't it to avenge the destruction of his clone? Why did his son not appreciate his kindness and blame him for acting on his own accord? Damn it! Qin Hong paced up and down the room. Chapter 2878. He glanced at Qin Chao solemnly. Go to the outskirts to inquire again. We must erase all traces of our actions. Qin Chao promptly nodded in agreement and led the group to the outskirts. On the other side, Mu Qingya had Mu Liang lead a group of elite disciples from the Mu family and hastily rush out of the imperial capital. They searched the outskirts but didn't find any traces of the little stoic. How can there be no one? Mu Qingya asked anxiously, have you notified Master? We've already notified Madam. Mu Qingya stomped her feet in anxiety. Sigh, what exactly is going on? Why would someone attack Jojo in the outskirts without rhyme or reason? Madam, this place is very dangerous. You had better return first, Mu Liang said with a troubled expression. He also sighed ruefully in his heart, Madam truly cares a lot about Miss Chiao. As soon as she heard a subordinate report that Miss Chiao was ambushed not long after leaving the capital, she immediately rushed over and wouldn't listen to him no matter how he persuaded her. Seeing her so worried, Mu Liang casually comforted her. Miss Chiao is blessed by the heavens, so she should be fine. I hope so. Mu Qingya paced back and forth anxiously beside Mu Liang. If something happens to Jojo, how am I going to explain it to Xingqian and her deceased mother? Madam, she'll be fine. Mu Liang tried to persuade him again, but he really did not have anything else to say. He turned around and ordered the Mu clan's elite disciples beside him to go further away and search for the person. Madam, don't worry. His Majesty already knows about this matter. Just now, he sent quite a few people to search everywhere. They only found traces of a battle, but there weren't too many bloodstains there. Miss Chiao is probably fine. Mu Liang sighed ruefully in his heart. A biological mother and daughter were nothing more than this. Madam was truly a kind-hearted and good woman. She could even treat the former Madam's daughter so well with all her heart. She was just an ordinary woman, but she rushed over to deal with her stepdaughter's matter with all her heart. It really was hard on her to be so worried to this extent. Mu Liang, send people further away and search carefully. Maybe Qiao Qiao got hurt when she was fighting with someone and ran far away. Yes, Madam. Mu Liang sent 2 disciples of the Mu family to protect the woman while he led his men to mount his horse. Just as he was about to leave, his eyes couldn't help but turn cold and his mouth let out a surprised and bewildered cry. Madam, it's eldest miss. Why would eldest miss suddenly appear here? Mu Rochuan, who had just walked out of the teleportation glyph array, looked a little disheveled. Where was the image of a delicate and charming young lady from before? Eldest miss. Mu Liang urged his horse and rushed over. He quickly dismounted and subconsciously reached out to support Mu Roxian. Mu Rochuan swung her arm and pushed away Mu Liang's support. There were abrasions all over her face and body. Her hair and face were stained with something unknown. At this moment, she looked as miserable as a beggar. There was no trace of her former elegance, coldness, and nobility. Mu Qingya's eyes narrowed and she hurried forward. Xian, what's wrong with you? How did it end up like this? Where are you from? When Mu Rochuan saw her mother, she suddenly burst into tears and rushed over to hug her mother, Mu Qingya. Mu Qingya's body stiffened slightly. "Don't wait for me. I probably won't finish updating until midnight." Chapter 2879. She was probably not used to her daughter's fragile state. Mu Qingya gently pushed Mu Rochuan away and looked at her lovingly. "Child, what happened? Don't panic. Tell mother." Mu Rochuan didn't sense anything wrong and continued to hug her mother tightly as she cried, "Mother, mother." It really wasn't easy for her to make the journey. At first, she just wanted to come back to see her mother, talk to her, and tell her what was on her mind. But she didn't expect that there would be a slight deviation when she passed through the great north-facing forest. The teleportation talisman array sent her to the great north-facing forest. Left with no choice, she could only fight her way out of the encirclement. She had nearly used up all the talismans she had on her to travel all the way from the Royal Academy to the Imperial capital. The moment she saw Mu Qingya, all the grievances and depression in her heart turned into deep sadness. All she wanted to do was to snuggle into her mother's embrace and seek comfort. Mu Qingya's expression stiffened. She raised her right hand in the air for a long time before it came down with difficulty. She patted her daughter's shoulder and said with a smile, "Xian, what's wrong with you? You're not like your usual self. Don't cry first. Finding your sister is more important." Mu Qingya gently pushed her away again and looked at her lovingly with a warm expression. "When your sister left the Imperial capital this afternoon, she was ambushed by a group of unknown death warriors. Her whereabouts are unknown now, she's dead." Mu Rochuan suddenly shrieked. Her abnormal behavior made Mu Qingya frown slightly. A faint trace of displeasure slid through her heart. She shook her head and said, "Jojo is blessed by the heavens. Of course she'll be fine." Mu Rochuan subconsciously clenched her fists. "Mother, I have something to tell you. You suddenly came back from the Imperial Academy. Something must have happened. But your matter isn't urgent. Find your sister first, sister. Since when do I have a sister?" Mu Rochuan's face suddenly twisted. She couldn't help but shout, "Mother, have you forgotten that I'm the one who crawled out of your stomach? That so-called sister has nothing to do with us at all." Mu Qingya looked at her in shock. "What did you say? How can you say that? Isn't that so?" She was just a wild child that no one wanted. She had never been loved by a father or mother since she was young. "Mother, why do you have to curry favor with her? Is it because she is different from before and is now the crown princess of the divine land?" Slap! Mu Qingya's right hand trembled as she stared in shock at her daughter, who had a somewhat sinister expression on her face. She simply could not believe that these words actually came out of her daughter's mouth. Was she bewitched? Why would he say that? Mu Rochuan couldn't believe that her mother would slap her in the face for the sake of another family's child. She screamed, "Mother! I'm your biological daughter, aren't I? Why do you only think about protecting her and not think about your own daughter? For her, you can hit me like this. Are you still my mother?" Mu Rochuan glared angrily at Mu Qingya before turning around and running towards the Mu estate. Eldest young miss," Nanny Chiu called out from behind her. Chapter 2880. Mu Qingya was also completely stunned, as if she couldn't understand her daughter's current behavior. She was frozen on the spot. Madam. Nanny Chiu hurriedly comforted her. Eldest Miss was just momentarily distracted. She didn't mean to contradict you, madam. This servant sees that Eldest Miss's complexion is a bit off. Madam, you should hurry back to the Mu residence to see how Eldest Miss is doing. Mu Qingya naturally also saw that Mu Rushuan's situation was very strange. She was also somewhat worried about her daughter, but she was very worried about Jojo if she didn't personally follow up. Mu Liang noticed Mu Qingya's hesitation, and he hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Don't worry, madam. We'll do our best to search for Miss Jiao, and we'll absolutely not be careless and miss any search area." Mu Qingya smiled and nodded. "That's good. Then I'll have to trouble you, Mu Liang. You're too polite, madam." Mu Liang was flattered and hurriedly cupped his fists again. Mu Qingya was ultimately still worried about her daughter. Nanny Chiu helped her into the carriage and they headed to the Mu residence. Shortly after entering the residence, Mu Qingya brought Nanny Chiu and the others to her daughter's Lotus Pavilion court. Mu Qingya frowned in confusion when she was told that her daughter had locked herself in her room after returning. Not long ago, when her daughter left the Mu residence to go to the Royal Academy, she still looked happy and excited, as if she yearned for the academy life. But who knew that in just a few days, she would run back as if she had suffered all kinds of grievances. Mu Qingya sighed and pushed open the door to her daughter's room to enter. "Xian, what's wrong with you?" Mu Rushuan was so angry that she had covered herself in the blanket and was sobbing softly. When she heard the voice, she couldn't help but cry out, "You don't even acknowledge me as your daughter. Why are you still looking for me?" Mu Qingya couldn't help but be stunned. "Why don't I acknowledge you as my daughter?" "Xian, don't throw a tantrum anymore." Mu Qingya reached out to pull the blanket off her daughter. Looking at her red eyes from crying, she frowned and said, "But someone in the academy has wronged you." Mu Rushuan burst into tears. "Mother, there's a crack in my Dantian's spiritual void realm." "What?" Mu Qingya's expression changed slightly as her gaze turned unpredictable. "A crack has appeared in your spiritual void realm." "Yes, it's because of her. That so-called bullshit sister." Mu Rushuan couldn't help but grit her teeth and cry out, "It's because of her that my state of mind was affected. That's why, she recounted everything that had happened in the academy, including the conversation that Shi Yongqian had with her. She told her mother everything without missing a single word. She poured out all her grievances, discomfort, shock, and hatred to her mother like she was pouring out all her bitterness. She thought that her mother would definitely comfort her, but who would have thought Mu Qingya looked at her with an indifferent expression. After a long while, she said, "So, you believe that the reason why your spiritual void realm ruptured is because your sister is especially outstanding. This matter has agitated you." Mu Rushuan only felt that her mother's words were extremely grating, and her expression changed several times. She couldn't help but defend herself forcefully. "She's an orphan who has no parents and has wandered on Sikong planet for so many years. What does she have to compare with me? Silly." Mu Qingya looked at her daughter coldly. Chapter 2881. Your spiritual ruin mirror was damaged because of your unstable state of mind. How can you blame it on your sister? Your sister is an Earth-rank talisman master. Your sister knows how to draw teleportation talisman arrays because she learned it herself. Why are you jealous of her? I'm not jealous of her. Mu Rushuan defended herself. She's nothing. She's just a pitiful little worm who has been wandering in the lower star domain for many years. Right, how could she be jealous of such a pitiful little worm? Mu Qingya shook her head. Xian, you're too eager for quick success and refuse to admit your mistake. Looking at her mother's disappointed expression, Mu Rushuan could not help but burst into tears. She was only a 17-year-old girl after all. Her tolerance was not as strong as she thought. All right, don't cry. Mu Qingya sighed helplessly and hugged her daughter. She patted her gently on the back twice. It's not like there's no way to fix the crack in the spiritual void realm. You just need to find the herbs and get an alchemist above the black rank to refine a sky-mending pill for you. Mother, I'm really not jealous of her. Alright, alright, alright. Mu Qingya nodded with a smile. She knew that the girl was thin-skinned and could not put down her pride, so she went along with her. Xian, you have to remember that your sister is a talented person. You have to be on good terms with her. You're not allowed to say things like what you said today about a pitiful little wild child in the future. Mu Rochuan sobbed and nodded. She felt a little vexed and regretful. She had said those things to Arbor in front of so many people. If these words were to reach Arbor's ears, things would not end well. Alright, Mu Liang and the rest are not outsiders. They will not spread it. However, you have to be more careful with what you say in the future. Besides, Jojo is your sister. How can you have such thoughts about your sister and say such things? Mu Qingya patted the back of her daughter's hand. You can't write two Mu characters with one stroke. You and your sister are the legitimate daughters. You have to support the entire Mu family together in the future. The higher she goes, the better the Mu family and you will be. Don't listen to her childish words. She always wants to distance herself from our Mu family. As long as the old master is here, this relationship can't be cleared at all, you know. Mu Qingya kindly tidied up her daughter's hair and smiled faintly at her. You were right to reject the cunning Shi Yongqian. You don't have to interact with that kind of person in the future. You and Jojo are family. Don't be instigated by outsiders and do something stupid. Mother, I understand. Mu Rochuan lowered her head and said. Xian, you don't have to feel inferior. She thinks that her status is inferior to your sister's. Mother never told you, but you've been engaged since you were young. Your future husband is not much worse than the crown prince of the divine prefecture. Mu Rochuan seemed to have been struck by lightning. She stared blankly at her mother and asked in a trembling voice, Mother, what are you talking about? You left in a hurry before, so Mother forgot to tell you. Originally, I wanted to find an opportunity to visit you at the academy and tell you about this. Since you're back, I'll tell you. Chapter 2882. Xian, you're also the future crown princess. The crown princess of the underworld region. I'm impossible. Mu Rochuan's eyes widened as she looked at her mother in disbelief. Silly child, why is it impossible? Mu Rochuan smiled. This marriage has been decided long ago. However, the underworld region's crown prince left the underworld region for some reason and has never returned. Oh, that's right. The two of you should have met in the academy, right? Mu Qingya looked at her gently. Recently, Mother received a letter from the underworld region's imperial noble consort. This matter has been preliminarily decided. Impossible. Mu Rochuan stood up with a slightly agitated expression. Mu Qingya saw that she didn't seem very happy about this marriage and couldn't help but frown. It said that the underworld region's crown prince is a man of striking appearance and extremely talented. What are you dissatisfied about? Isn't the reason why you were affected by your sister, causing your mind to be unstable and the spiritual void realm to crack partly because your sister has been suppressing you in every way ever since she returned to the divine continent? Not only is her talent more outstanding than yours, even her status is more noble than yours. As long as you marry the underworld region's crown prince, you will be the official underworld region's crown princess in the future. I don't even know this person. Mu Rochuan couldn't help but cry out agitatedly. I am not marrying. Mother, don't randomly matchmake me. Mu Qingya couldn't help but find it funny when she saw her anxious and angry appearance. How is Mother randomly matchmaking you? The marriage contract between you and the underworld region's crown prince was written a few years ago. She took out a yellow storage talisman from her pocket and took out an exquisitely carved ebony box. She handed it to Mu Rochuan. "Take a look at this marriage contract." Mu Rochuan opened the ebony box with trembling hands and took out a slightly yellowed marriage contract that had the fragrance of ink. She read line by line and felt her vision darken. The marriage contract was written very clearly. It was a promise made by the imperial noble consort Lu to thank the Mu family for saving her. When her son came of age 20 years later, he would come and ask for the Mu family's eldest daughter's hand in marriage. The marriage contract didn't specify what kind of favor it was. "No, I have no feelings for this underworld crown prince. I don't even know him. I won't marry him." Mu Rochuan threw the marriage contract out. Mu Qingya's expression changed several times. She looked at her daughter coldly. "Xian, you're too willful and reckless. Your father is also aware of this matter. Your marriage is already set in stone. After you return to the academy, you should spend more time with the underworld crown prince. You don't have to say anything." Seeing that her daughter still wanted to refute, Mu Qingya raised her hand to stop her. "Partners are all born from experience. If you don't spend more time with Ming Province's crown prince, how do you know that he won't be your future husband? Besides, there is already a marriage certificate as proof. You are his woman when you are alive, and you can only be a ghost of the Ming family when you die." Mu Rochuan's face turned pale as if she was struck by lightning. Mother actually said such decisive words to her, not giving her any leeway to refute. Royal Academy Donglin Garden. When Xiao Mu woke up from her daze, she reflexively activated her inner vision and carefully examined the object enveloped by the hazy mist inside her spiritual mound. This thing looked a bit like a white duck egg. Could it be that she accidentally swallowed some egg? She hurriedly dug out the 2 white duck eggs and heaved a sigh of relief. She felt that she was a bit nervous. 8-night watch ended. I'll adjust the time tomorrow and sleep to sleep. Chapter 2883. Looking at the perfectly intact egg in her hand, Arbor thought to herself that she was seriously ill. Why did she think that she had eaten an egg by mistake? She focused her mind and carefully looked at the foggy thing in her spiritual mound realm for a while. After distinguishing it again, she felt that the thing that was tightly wrapped in the fog did not look like a white duck egg, but more like a spherical object. What was it? She could not figure it out, and at this moment, her divine sense had automatically withdrawn from her inner sight. She retracted her gaze, but her gaze was somewhat dazed as it landed in front of her. Strange, when did she return to her own room in Donglin Garden? The little guy turned over and sat up, looking around. He lifted the blanket and was about to jump down when he felt his little head become dizzy. She quickly leaned against the bed frame and gently massaged her swollen forehead. It was already 10:00 in the night. Why was Donglin Garden so quiet, without any sound of people? Could it be that Qi Xianxian and the rest had not returned from class? Arbor held on to the stool beside the bed and stood up. She did not dare to shake her head as she felt a little uncomfortable. Why was there no one here? She pushed open the door and walked out. Looking at the empty courtyard, she was a little dazed. Where did Mo Lian go? The little Emperor Jojo was sick, and there was no one in the house. The little fellow's little face unconsciously scrunched up into a ball. He sat dejectedly on the doorsill, propping up his chin with one hand as he angrily stared at the pitch-black courtyard. After waiting for a full 15 minutes, there was really nothing in the courtyard other than the sound of the wind. Sir Jojo was a little angry. Usually, before the sky turned dark, everyone would have left school. Why was she the only one in Donglin Garden today? Even the kitchen maid who usually held a spatula and made a fuss was nowhere to be seen. Jojo was very angry. She puffed up her little face, steadied herself, and slowly stood up, walking towards the courtyard door. She sat on a small stone stool at the courtyard door, hugged her body, and supported her chin with her two little hands, staring at the road in front of her. It was dark and led to the largest cultivation hall in the north of the learning area. No one came over at all. There wasn't even a single star in the dark sky, let alone a moon. It was so dark that he couldn't see the road under his feet. The little fellow became more and more depressed. He lowered his little chin and called out in a muffled voice, "Cho-Cho, why is there no one here?" She pursed her lips and lowered her head to lie on her knees. A few minutes later, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. "Cho-Cho. Cho-Cho. Dian Dian. Dian Dian. Dirt lump, dirt lump." Arbor suddenly jumped up from the ground, his small face suddenly filled with a layer of nervousness. Her figure flickered as she tried to enter the paradise planet. However, she was repelled by a powerful force. Jojo took a few steps back. His little face instantly turned pale and his heart was in a mess. "Cho-Cho, Cho-Cho, where are you? Little ball." In the past, Cho-Cho would respond to her every call. Even when Cho-Cho was in seclusion, she could still feel a faint connection with Cho-Cho. But now, she suddenly realized in a panic that she couldn't feel anything at all. Cho-Cho. Arbor didn't know what to do now. She jumped down from the small stone stool and suddenly summoned the ferrule from her conscious. She held it tightly in her hand and looked around cautiously. Chapter 2884. What was going on? In reality, she could sense that there wasn't any dangerous aura around her. But she couldn't enter her paradise planet. Cho-Cho had also lost contact with her, and Dian Dian and Little Pimple had both disappeared. If they weren't being controlled by someone's spiritual pressure, then why? Everyone seemed to have disappeared in an instant, which made her suddenly wonder if Cho-Cho and the others had never existed. Was she dreaming? Impossible. Mo-Lien, the little fellow shouted. "Duan Yu. Xian Xian." Arbor abruptly turned around and looked at the empty courtyard. When she turned around again, there was still nothing on the pitch-black path. Mo-Lien. Arbor called out everyone's names, but no one answered her. This made her feel like she had fallen into an ice cellar, as if she had returned to the past. She had nothing left, boom. She was horrified and abruptly looked up at the pitch-black night sky. There, it was as if countless star fragments were blossoming, and the brilliant fireworks illuminated the entire courtyard in an instant. The little fellow shrank back a step, her eyes still somewhat shaken. The instant she turned around, she saw Mo-Lien. The tall and slender figure was standing not far behind her, his gaze fixed on her. Jojo was somewhat absent-minded, and she sprinted toward him. Mo-Lien. That figure faintly dispersed, as if what she saw just now was merely a shadow. Mo-Lien. Jojo shouted loudly as she ran back and forth in the court. She was so anxious that her forehead was drenched in sweat, and her small face was scrunched up tightly. Under the night sky, those clusters of fireworks were like shattered stars, within reach. After Arbor ran back and forth in the court for a while, she suddenly paused and dazedly looked at the figure standing at the door to her room. It was Mo-Lien. It was him. His black hair was loosely tied up and fell behind his back. Her plain white brocade robe was as elegant as snow under the brilliant fireworks. Her features were picturesque, elegant and otherworldly. He stood in the corridor, his eyes as vast as the sea, quietly looking at her. The sparkling fireworks behind him instantly became his background. Sir Jojo shrank his hand, almost as if he did not dare to walk over. Until the man opened his arms and made a gesture of hugging her. Without any hesitation, the little fellow ran over and bumped into her arms without any rhyme or reason. It wasn't until her small hands hugged his warm waist that she realized that the person in front of her wasn't an illusion. Mo Lien, where did you and the others go? Miss Chiao was depressed and a little scared. Just now, she was standing alone at the entrance of the courtyard. That feeling was really uncomfortable. It felt as if the whole world had thrown her away. Mo Lien, where did you run off to? Why is there no one at home? Where is there? The little fellow looked up. When she saw his calm eyes looking at her, her heart inexplicably trembled slightly. What's wrong? Based on the intuition of a small animal, Sir Jojo inexplicably felt that a storm was coming. Did you feel scared just now? Sir Jojo subconsciously nodded his little head. In the next second, he pressed his lips down and ruthlessly crushed them. Sir Jojo hurriedly reached out to push him, but his hands were held back and pushed against the door with great force. Chapter 2885. When I lost everything, I also felt fear and terror. Mo Lien bit down hard on her little mouth and pressed his lips against hers, almost whispering. But I almost lost everything today. Because you were willful and disobedient. Because of you. His voice was so low that it sounded right by her lips. That storm-like kiss from before was like a spring breeze and rain in the end, soft and gentle, making people feel indescribably uncomfortable. Arbor stuttered for the first time. Then he thought about it and felt that this situation was a bit off. You did it on purpose. Jojo finally understood and angrily glared at him with a pair of big, black eyes. Then what about Chocho? You deliberately made Chocho and the rest ignore me. Miss Chiao was so angry that her eyes were a bit red. Just now, when Chocho, Dian, and the others ignored her and she couldn't enter Paradise Planet, she really panicked. Since the first day of her rebirth, Chocho had always been by her side. Her relationship with Chocho wasn't something that could be described simply as master and servant. Master, this time I really didn't want to bother with you. It wasn't the Crown Prince who told me to ignore you, it was me who wanted to cooperate with him. Chocho suddenly said. The little water child in Paradise Planet wanted to go up and cover its mouth, but it was almost too late. Why was this death-seeking child so honest? Couldn't you just push the blame to Prince Mo? Why did you have to admit it yourself? The little dirt lump at the side blinked and nodded repeatedly. Chocho is right, it's right. Little Master should be taught a profound lesson. That's right. We took the initiative to cooperate with His Highness the Crown Prince this time. Miss Chiao's little face was red with anger, and all the hairs on her body stood up. These brats all wanted to rebel, right? Just now, she had called them all, but no one bothered with her. She was really so flustered that she couldn't tell north from south. Mo Lien leaned close to her lips and looked at her calmly. Jojo. You can trust your friends. As he spoke, he stared deeply into her eyes. Arbor's heart trembled slightly. He said stubbornly, I don't distrust you. I don't trust you, friend. Look at me. What do you see now? An angry expression, Jojo answered honestly. What else? You can't hit me. I've already grown up. I can't spank her but old anymore. Arbor struggled in his arms. Thinking of this person's past, he suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. That reminds me, Mo Lien said faintly. Arbor was dumbfounded. He quickly reached out and pushed him. I know why you're angry. I didn't do it on purpose. She was just too angry at that time, so she thought that she must use her own ability to kill those men of sacrifice who came to kill her. But you scared me like this today. You're not good either. You also have to apologize to me. Miss Chow's little face darkened as she nagged, you have to compensate. I still have to compensate. A figure suddenly jumped out from the shadows of the corridor. I told you, this little girl, you can't reason with her at all. I have to beat her up today. Chapter 2886. And Master. She saw young Shirong suddenly jump out and dash toward her with a dark expression. Arbor hastily shrank back into Mo Lien's arms and tugged at his sleeve. I can forgive you for scaring me earlier. Persuade Aunt Master to return. With Prince Mo's wit and eloquence, he could definitely pacify Aunt Master Yang with a few words. When Mo Lien ignored her, Sir Jojo felt that his authority as the little emperor had been severely challenged. She glared at him in a huff and hastily hid behind him. Aunt Master, what are you doing? Everyone is watching. She finally realized that Mo Lien and Duan Yu, these two idiots, had used their presences to isolate everyone earlier. In reality, they were all standing in the shadows and watching her frantically run around to call for them. Simply vile. Young Shirong ran to her side and pulled the little fellow out from behind Mo Lien without a second word. Do you know where you were wrong? Sir Jojo really wanted to shake her head, but the situation forced her to, so she could only nod obediently. Speak. Jojo shrunk her neck. I shouldn't have tried to show off. But the path of cultivation is filled with tribulations to begin with. You must grow and mature in battle. The more the little fellow spoke, the more fluent she became. How can a flower in a greenhouse grow? I didn't do it on purpose. However, when she saw young Shirong's face turn darker and darker toward the end, she quietly lowered her voice. That's quite reasonable. Dao Wuji couldn't help but chuckle as he ran out to stir up trouble. It's not that Aunt Master doesn't want you to grow. But you also have to look at the situation. If you fought one-on-one, Aunt Master has nothing to say. But you clearly saw so many kamikaze warriors besieging you. 2 fists are no match for 4 hands, so why didn't you call for help? Peach Blossom clearly wanted to help you, so why did you have to stop her? A certain venerable immortal called Peach Blossom looked at Aunt Master Yang in bewilderment. Aunt Master, I've emphasized to you many times that I'm not called Peach Blossom, I'm called Shurchin. Also, Peony and Ginkgo, why didn't you ask them to come out and help? You've already been beaten up by the crowd, yet you're still trying to show off. Is this the way of cultivation you speak of? The 2 sisters, Peony and Ginkgo, looked at each other silently before looking at the venerable Peach Blossom immortal with sympathy. Jojo's martial uncle had categorized the Peach Blossoms into the ranks of the sisters. Peach Blossom, Peony, Ginkgo, these were all very normal titles. Why did it sound like a brothel in Martial Uncle's mouth? Damn! You weren't fighting with anyone at all. You were being one-sidedly ganged up on. Duan Yu said irritably. Jojo, ask yourself honestly. Was it purely because you didn't want us to help? Yuan Shurchin sighed. No. You don't remember us at all. Xiao Mu's heart sank with a thump. At that time, when Cho called you, you blurted out the words to stop it. Do you know the reason? Yuan Shurchin gazed deeply at her. You weren't conversing with Cho at all. No. Arbor shuddered and reflexively refuted Yuan Shurchin. You had already entered a demonic state at that time, so you didn't remember us at all. We could have helped you. So they punished her and made her experience what it was like to have no friends or family. They wanted her to firmly remember today. Chapter 2887. The reason why she had rejected Cho so quickly was just as Shurchin had said. That was because she was talking to herself and not Cho. That sentence, "Don't let anyone help me," was the best description of her thoughts at that time. She didn't need anyone's help, she didn't need anyone's help. Even if she was alone, she could solve everything. "Jojo, you're no longer alone." Young Shirong reached out and smoothed her hair, a trace of affection in her eyes. "Seeing that you're the birthday girl today, I'll remember this beating for now. If you do it again, I'll beat you up too." Qi Xianxian, who was at the side, couldn't help but rush forward and hug her tightly. She reached out and lightly punched her shoulder. "Jojo, no matter what happens in the future, remember that I'll always be there for you. Happy 16th birthday." Arbor was stunned. She didn't remember that today was her birthday at all. No wonder when she left the royal school, Mo Lian had repeatedly told her that she must come back today. She turned her head to look at him, only to see him looking at her calmly. His eyes seemed to be emotionless, but it was because of him that the little fellow couldn't help but shrink her neck. This was really an unforgettable birthday party. She had been hunted down in the afternoon and had finally managed to kill them back. When she returned to the royal school, she had been given a solid shock. Now, although everyone had handed over their compensation, gifts, the little fellow was still a little shaken. Although there was still a trace of fear in her heart, she was more happy than happy. The feeling of regaining something that she had lost made her a little confused. She felt that after staying in the crowd for so long, she didn't want to go back to the cold castle surrounded by high walls. Mo Lian didn't say much, only silently accompanying her by her side. They accompanied her to distribute the cakes and eat until late at night. Only then did everyone return to their rooms to rest. The little fellow was a little worried. Seeing that everyone had left, she pretended to be tired and raised her hand to yawn. I'm going to sleep too." She walked towards her room, but just as she was about to enter the room, she bumped into the man with a bang. "What are you doing?" The little emperor baby couldn't help but shout. "I've tolerated you all night." He had remained silent and expressionless all this time, following by her side. Could it be that he was influenced by the company he kept, and wanted to be the second expressionless face? Baw 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 baw. How could she say that she had facial paralysis? Arbor moved to the side and said angrily, "Today is my birthday." What do you want?" She hadn't even settled the score with him for colluding with so many people to scare her. At this moment, he still dared to provoke the little emperor. He simply did not want to be treated well. "I'm not done yet." Arbor was dumbfounded. He couldn't keep up with his train of thought. What did you say?" Mo Lian grabbed her little hand and directly dragged her into the side room. With a bang, the door of the side room was closed. "Speak." What if she couldn't keep up with his pace at all? The little stoic was quite anxious on the inside. Why did he feel that there was something wrong with Mo Lian today? She felt some regret in her heart. She was also aware that the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's words weren't without reason. When she was surrounded and attacked, the only thing on her mind was how to counterattack. She really didn't think of relying on other people's strength to counterattack. "Don't wait for me, I'll say it's over when I'm done." Chapter 2888. Why aren't you saying anything? When she came back to her senses, she saw Mo Lian, this guy, pulling her into his embrace as he nuzzled his head back and forth on her fair and slender neck. Arbor looked at him blankly. She really didn't know what he wanted her to say. "You have a bad memory." Mo Lian reached out to knock her head. "Look at me, what did you see?" "An angry face." Miss Chow answered honestly. Although he was quite handsome, his face was expressionless. One look and one could tell that under that calm exterior, there was a raging heart. "Something's wrong." "Worried?" Arbor tried to say these two words, then raised her hand to support her forehead. Closing her eyes, she said, "Dizzy, head." Mo Lien carried her up without another word, and walked slowly towards the brocade couch at the side. "What did you see?" There was no light in the room at all, and it was completely dark. She wanted to ask, what could she see? There wasn't even the slightest bit of moonlight outside. Fortunately, her eyesight was outstanding. Even if it was pitch black, she could still make out his face with difficulty. The little fellow reached out to cup his face, and looked at him with a serious expression. "Mo Lien, I was wrong this time. I won't do it again." "But you weren't right either. You colluded with so many people to scare me. Until now, I'm still so scared that my heart keeps beating." Later, she would definitely settle the score with that little ball. It was simply too much. She didn't even want to think about how panicked she was when little ball didn't respond even when she called for it. "What did you see?" You only know how to say this one sentence?" Sir Jojo was furious, but he couldn't vent his anger. Her little hand pinched his icy face hard, and she said seriously, "I saw your panic and fear." Prince Mo nodded his head and reached out to pull her into his embrace. They sat on the bed together and he hugged her tightly without saying a word. The room was silent for a long time. "Shiqin told me that when you fought against the self-detonation of the two men of sacrifice, my feelings were just as you said. I was panicked and scared. Even despair. Things are different now." He suddenly lowered his head and looked at her seriously. "There are many things that you don't have to face alone. You need to grow, but don't disregard your own life. Even if in the future, in the face of a strong enemy who is much stronger than you will have to think of other ways to deal with them appropriately. It doesn't mean that you are weak. Jojo." He pressed his forehead against hers, his eyes fixed on her. "I'm more scared than I've ever been. Because you don't cherish yourself." Arbor reflected for a moment and held his hand. "It won't happen again." Prince Mo raised his eyebrows and looked at her. "Really?" Sir Jojo promised, but immediately felt that he was terrified and was a little unconvinced. "Humph. You're not good today either. You even persuaded Marshal Uncle to come and scare me. I'm already so scared. Naturally, I want to get back at you." Mo Lien said indifferently. The little fellow almost jumped up from the bed when she saw that he dared to provoke her little emperor's dignity. He held her down with one hand and kept her in his arms. Sir Jojo rolled his eyes at him. He stretched out his hand in front of her and suddenly opened his palm, revealing a bright chain in his palm. The most special thing was that the pendant was a pentagram. Chapter 2889. Sir Jojo, who was about to properly debate with him, silently reached out to take the pentagram necklace in his hand. His fingers stroked that sparkling star with joy. This star was silver in color. It was very bright and dazzling, just like the stars in the sky. It was very dazzling as it flickered. "For you," he murmured next to her ear. He took the pentagram from her hand and lightly tossed it into the air. That star suddenly emitted a dazzling light, and the instant light illuminated the pitch-black room. The little stoic couldn't help but reflexively close her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, she was almost stupefied by the wondrous scene in front of her. Countless illusory fragments of stars appeared on this pitch-black roof, twinkling as if the entire starry sky outside had been moved into the room. It was truly too surprising. "Jojo." He lowered his head to look at her and murmured, "Happy birthday. I'm giving one of my stars to you." He reached out to cup her small face and kissed her lightly trembling eyelashes. "No matter how dark the road is, how long the night is, or how unpredictable the future is, this star will always be with you. This star can accompany you all the time. Do you like it? Mo Lien asked softly. Arbor's nose was a bit sour, but he nodded silently and smacked his lips on his cheek. I like it. Don't worry, when I encounter danger in the future, I'll definitely think of you guys first. I definitely won't be beaten by a crowd again. The path of growth will be filled with countless difficulties and dangers, so I'll protect myself even more properly. I definitely won't let you feel fearful. She watched as he gazed indifferently at her. The little stoic's heart stifled, and she beckoned with her hand, summoning that twinkling star into her hand. She prattled in all seriousness, I, Arbor, swear on one of Mo Lien's stars. I must protect myself well in the future. At the same time as I train, I must cherish Mo, Xiao, Lien, Xiao, great, life, person, even more. Prince Mo curved his lips and nodded, lowering his head to kiss her forehead. Remember what you said today. 7 o'clock the next day. Arbor was about to head to the cultivation hall when he saw Mu Xingchen rushing over. Big brother was in seclusion yesterday and missed little sister's birthday. Mu Xingchen looked at her apologetically. Arbor's expression was calm. It's just a small birthday. You've reached a critical juncture in your cultivation, so you don't need to worry about me. This is a small gift from Big Brother. Mu Xingchen took out a purple wooden box and handed it to Arbor. When Xiao Mu opened it, she was slightly surprised. Mu Xingchen actually gave him a rare West Snow Lotus. If this thing was combined with the longevity fruit, the longevity pill refined would not only be able to extend one's lifespan by 100 years, but most importantly, it could also restore one's youthful appearance. This is too precious. I know you like to collect medicinal herbs, Mu Xingchen hurriedly said, so, I remembered that when I was out adventuring in the early years, I came across a saint-grade medicinal herb by chance. I don't have much use for it anyway, just take it. No matter how precious something is, it can't compare to you. You're my most precious little sister, Mu Xingchen said indifferently. Upon seeing this, Mo Lien and the others tactfully didn't disturb them. They merely followed the two of them out of Donglin Court's doors at a distance. Rochuan returned to the sovereign capital without permission. Mu Xingchen said with a frown, I contacted Madam yesterday and said she won't be back for a few days. Chapter 2890. Arbor was taken aback, but she did not say anything and only nodded faintly. As for why Mu Rochuan returned to the capital without permission, what she did, and such questions, she was simply not interested in knowing. Seeing her cold expression at the mention of Mu Rochuan, Mu Xingchen tactfully did not continue. Just as Arbor walked out of the door, she saw Lu Zhang and Qin Qi running over. Second Sect Master, are we going to Rosy Cloud's Peak today? Arbor's eyes twitched. I plan to ask for a leave of absence from the tutor today. Let's set off tomorrow. That's good too. Then the two of us will go back and prepare first. After thinking it over, Qin Qi took out something from his inner world and handed it to Xiao Mu with a pained expression. Second Sect Master, this subordinate doesn't have anything good to give you. Just treat this as your birthday present. Arbor was simply speechless when she saw the filthy feather in the old man's hand. Everyone looked at her with a, "You're too stingy," expression, and Qin Qi involuntarily blushed. This is already the best I could find. Second Sect Master, you won't dislike this subordinate, right? Arbor was expressionless. I won't. Second Sect Master, this old man has nothing good to give you, so I'll just give you a painting. Lu Zhang was even more ruthless. She didn't know which pile of junk he had found, but he pulled out a yellowed scroll that was stained with some kind of greasy stuff. He handed it to her with a smile on his face. Actually, there's no need to be so courteous. Arbor forced out a sentence from between her teeth. You guys just returned to the Xuanji school not long ago. It won't be too late to give it to me when the Xuanji school's days are better. Hey, how can we delay a gift for second sect master? The two waved their hands, resolutely wanting to give the feather and painting to Arbor. Arbor was very exasperated. Just as she was hesitating on how to refuse, she looked up and saw Mo Lian and Duan Yu winking fiercely at her. She knew all too well how cunning these two were. Out of his understanding of these two people, Arbor quickly snatched the things in Lu Jing and Qin Chi's hands and put them back into his inner world without saying a word. The two old men looked at her in confusion. The second sect leader was actually such a sect leader. How could she reach out and take such a broken thing? Thank you, Senior. Duan Yu explained with a grin, this diagram contains 18 types of formations. After Master contracts it into her conscious, she can mobilize it at any time and set up formations wherever she goes. As expected of a great formation master, Senior Lu. This mechanism diagram is simply beyond standard. Senior Qin isn't bad either. You were actually able to part with a flying divine artifact. It's as light as a feather and possesses extremely strong defensive capabilities. It's also extremely convenient to carry around. It's truly a rare treasure. What the fuck? Qin Chi and Lu Jing silently looked at each other and then at their empty hands. Oh my god. They were originally just putting on an act and purposely turned the two treasures into rags and handed them to the little stoic. They expected that the stoic-faced second sect master would definitely look down on these treasures, but who knew just because she didn't have good judgment didn't mean that the two little rascals beside her didn't have good judgment. Qin Chi's heart ached so much that he only wanted to cry. This flying divine artifact was the best finished product he had forged in 100 years. On the other side, Lu Jing also wanted to cry but had no tears. He just wanted to tease the second sect master, but in the end he ended up teasing himself to death. Arbor expressionlessly walked around the two of them. Chapter 2891. Qin Chi and Lu Jing, the two of you go to a nearby town today and buy more rice, vegetables, and all kinds of daily necessities for the Xuanji sect. Prepare everything before we head to Rosy Cloud's Peak tomorrow. Bring them up as well. Since we still have to find the 101 first-generation disciples in the future, prepare what needs to be prepared first. After saying this, Arbor swaggered off with Mo Lian and the others, leaving behind two glaring old men. What was going on? They originally wanted to take the opportunity to tease their second-generation sect master, but it seemed like they freaking dug a hole and completely buried themselves. Qin Chi thumped his chest and stamped his feet. His heavenly horsetail feather. Lu Zheng's face was also green. My mechanism map. He spent so many years crafting it, but in the end, he completely ruined his treasure. What should he do? He really wanted to cry. The two of them looked at each other in dismay. Moreover, they were first-generation elders of the sect. Going out to make large purchases like oil, salt, sauces, vinegar, tea, and the like. Shouldn't this be the chores of the sect's miscellaneous disciples? Why did they have to complete it as two great elders? Were they sure the second-generation sect master wasn't pranking them two old brothers? The two of them miserably returned to their rooms and prepared to set off. Not mentioning how the two old men went out to purchase food while feeling aggrieved, Arbor and his group of companions cheerfully headed toward the cultivation hall after bidding farewell to Duan Yu and Mo Lian. The cultivation hall was located on the north side of the learning area. It was quite a distance away from the forging and concealed weapons halls on the south side. Strictly speaking, this was Xiao Mu's first time going to the cultivation hall for lessons after entering the school. Moreover, she had to ask for leave from the tutor on her first day. The little fellow rubbed her chin. How are the students getting along? Lu Yu revealed an indescribable expression for her to see. Arbor glanced at him before turning back to look at the little fatty. What's wrong? You couldn't have been bullied, right? Those seniors in the cultivation hall really aren't very friendly, the little fatty said while pursing his lips. When we study in the cultivation hall, old students and new students mix together. Although everyone more or less knows a little about the theoretical knowledge, when it comes to the actual combat class, the freshmen are always beaten up and the instructors can only pretend not to see it. Speaking of this, Qi Xianxian was filled with anger. Yesterday, I saw a senior bully a girl until she cried. He even forced her to hand over half of her contribution points. Qi Xianxian said angrily. What contribution points? Qiaomu hadn't gone to class for a day, but why did it feel like a century had passed? She felt confused about everything she heard. Hey, you still don't know, right? Qi Xianxian continued to nag at her. These contribution points are mainly used to purchase various resources. It's on the east side of the academy's residential area, on a contribution street. It's said that the things there are quite good. Since you don't need to spend your own spirit stones, spirit coins are very useful. Qiaomu gave an "oh" and nodded. Why aren't you curious about where the contribution points come from? Qiaomu blinked and said in all seriousness, why should I be curious about this thing? I don't lack supplies. Everyone was instantly speechless. Why do I feel like I can't continue chatting with her? Qi Xianxian turned to look at Lu Yu and the others in a daze. The latter shrugged and joked with a smile, looks like you're not the only one who feels this way. Hey, let me tell you, Jojo. After we enter the academy, every new student will be given 10,000 contribution points. Chapter 2892. I only heard Headmaster Yun say that you can obtain mission points by accepting missions at the mission center. That's different. Points are of a higher level. Also, it's very hard to earn. Qi Xianxian seemed to want to pour out all her grievances from these 2 days on the little stoic. Reportedly, you can only obtain 10 to 50 points after completing a level 1 mission. Qi Xianxian huffed. For example, a level 1 mission is to help the academy's medicinal garden by weeding, watering, and so on. This type of mission is usually claimed by those who have connections all year round. Oh. You're not angry at all. Qi Xianxian widened her round eyes. I heard them say that you have to gather 5,000 points before you can step into Huang Baolu. How long will it take to gather all of these 10 points? A level 2 mission is mainly to hunt a level 15 mystic beast called Ice Thread Rabbit in north-facing Great Forest. The main reason is that this Ice Thread Rabbit's fur is quite precious. It's used to weave fur collars and gloves, and it's very popular with many noble ladies and misses. Missions above level 3 require you to kill spirit beasts. Qi Xianxian felt like she was spewing out her grievances when she talked about this. I'm not talking to you about points right now. I'm talking about contribution points. Qi Xianxian stretched out her hand and poked her little head. These are contribution points. Everyone will be given 10,000 contribution points when they enter the academy. The only way to earn contribution points is through battle. Qi Xuanchuan's spittle splattered everywhere as the little stoic expressionlessly glanced at her. Moreover, it said that pitiful worms with less than 300 contribution points will be thrown into north-facing Great Forest by themselves to train for a month. They can only return to the academy after killing 30 spirit beasts. Our dear Qi Xianxian shook her small body. She couldn't help but shiver when she thought about the possibility of being thrown into a desolate place like the north-facing Great Forest to train for a month. There was no one around, and she had to kill spirit beasts all by herself. Arbor thought that this person might have persecutory delusions. She swept her a glance and brusquely pushed away the small face that was close to her. You're thinking too much. Because contribution points can only be earned through battle. That's why those seniors are so disgusting and always challenge us freshmen. There are also some who are even worse. They used bets to cheat us of our contribution points. You've been deceived. Arbor immediately turned to look at Qi Xianxian and the rest. No. The little fatty hurriedly shook his head. Xianxian was almost cheated out of 100 contribution points by them, but in the end, seeing that we were unwilling to tolerate it, they had no choice but to not completely fall out with us. That bastard called Zhong. He lied to me and said that if I invested 100 contribution points, I would get 200 contribution points tomorrow. You're making me dizzy. Thinking about the 2 wisps of mustache from yesterday, Xian jumped up again. Those older students are really bad. If we're not careful, they'll set us up. In short, we have to guard against them. As they spoke, the few of them had already arrived outside the white fence outside the cultivation hall. Looking over, they could see quite a number of people gathered there, making a ruckus. Each and every one of them was filled with righteous indignation. What's going on? What's going on? Oh. Qi Xianxian hastily ran over and pulled on a familiar little girl, asking, Hua, what happened? Why aren't you guys going in? Chapter 2893. That bastard Huang Qishan is up to something again. The girl called Hua, who was about the same age as Xianxian, angrily puffed up her face and shouted, he set up a table at the entrance. It's fine to say that he wants to enter the cultivation hall, but he wants to challenge and win against the 10 seniors. The loser will have to transfer 1,000 contribution points to them. What? Qi Xianxian angrily scolded with her hands on her hips. She felt hot blood rushing to her head. Has this Huang Qishan gone crazy thinking about contribution points? Isn't that so? I heard that he has his eyes set on a heaven-grade longevity pill on the contribution street and it costs 10,000 contribution points to buy it. He only has 3,000 contribution points with him now. He's definitely thinking of ways to take it from us. Qi Xianxian hurriedly took a step back and muttered with a stingy face, I definitely can't give my contribution points to him. After such a long time, the cultivation hall's teachers still haven't come out. They definitely know about this and are hiding in the dark to observe us. Those teachers were also very unreliable. Usually, when they saw the seniors bullying the freshmen, they would turn a blind eye to this kind of situation. They didn't treat the freshmen seriously at all. Arbor silently took 2 steps back from the crowd. Actually, she didn't care about contribution points at all. She didn't even care about those high-grade contribution points. Today, she was only here to take a small break, but she couldn't even enter the cultivation hall's main door. The cultivation hall's contribution points ranking is out. Someone shouted excitedly and everyone ran towards the entrance. Through the white fence, one could see a black crystal tablet erected at the entrance of the cultivation hall. On top of it, there were water ripples and rows of names appeared. The cultivation hall was the majority of the Imperial School students and there were more than 8,000 of them. As a result, more than 8,000 names were densely packed together on a black crystal tablet. It was impossible to see them clearly. Do you see me? How many contribution points do I have? We're all freshmen, so our rankings should be quite high. I see it at the front, 10,000. Everyone was talking at the same time when someone shouted, Hey, quickly look, who's in the first place? There are actually 30,000 contribution points. A group of older students who had heard the commotion also walked over. Separated by the white wooden fence, they stood in front of the black crystal tablet and looked at the name engraved on the tablet with complicated expressions. Wow, are my eyes playing tricks on me? The first place will get 30,000 contribution points. Let me see, let me see. Qi Xianxian hurriedly squeezed her way forward. Her eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets when she saw what was on the screen. She couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow, Jojo, quick, quick, come and take a look. You're rich, rich, rich. What the hell is this? There's a accent behind her name. Isn't she a new student like us? How did this new student get 30,000 contribution points the moment he entered the academy? Could it be that he miscalculated and gave me too much? You're the one who's wrong. Your whole family is wrong." Qi Xianxian turned around and glared at the young man. She squeezed out of the crowd and grabbed Jojo's hand. "Jojo. You're rich. You have 30,000 contribution points. What's the use?" Arbor was expressionless. "It can be exchanged." Qi Xianxian suddenly felt that she couldn't continue. "That's right, what's the use of keeping it with Jojo? Happy New Year." She had to wait, there were still 3 more chapters to go. It was really the end of the year. Chapter 2894. The little fatty rubbed his nose. "I'm just curious. Who on earth transferred so many contribution points to Qiao Qiao? Does that even need to be said?" Qi Xianxian rolled her eyes at him. "It must be His Highness the Crown Prince and His Highness Rongli." "I guessed it." Arbor's mouth twitched. At the same time, Duan Yu and Mo Lian, who were also admiring the contribution points ranking on their own branch's black crystal tablet, were surrounded by many people. How can His Highness the Crown Prince, Prince Chen, have 0 points? There must be something wrong with this thing. They probably didn't accumulate enough contribution points for His Highness to enroll in the school. This is too deceptive. Don't worry, Your Highness. Let's each donate some points to increase His Highness's contribution points. Right, right. I approve. Mo Lian and Duan Yu, what happened? Why did so many people in the branch eagerly step forward to donate points to him? I'll donate 300. 500, I'll donate 500. Your Highness, I'm called Zhou Xing, I'll donate 1,000. Your Highness, I'm called Wang Gui is me. I'll donate 2,000. Duan Yu looked at the girl called Wang Gui and winked at him. He felt a bit uncomfortable soon. The 2 people's contribution points ranking in the forging branch and concealed weapons branch shot up in a straight line. Arbor didn't know about these 2 episodes, but she found it a bit funny. Those 2 people were baffled. Why did they give her all these contribution points? Qi Xianxian chuckled and said, "They must be making you buy some good food." Arbor was expressionless. "I'm not a foodie." The group of senior students who were separated by the white fence were looking at them with complicated expressions. "Hey, who is Arbor at the top of the contribution points ranking? Come out and let brother take a look." Huang Qishan couldn't go up to stop his brother and saw his brother, Su Fugue, boldly standing at the fence entrance and speaking with a chuckle. "Who are you calling big brother?" Qi Xianxian slammed her hand on the gate, but she was repelled by a force. The gate had been covered by the spiritual pressure of a level 11 spirit master. It was really hard to break in like this. Arbor hurried forward to support her. His dark eyes looked at Su Fugue. "What's your name?" Su Fugue inexplicably shuddered. He only felt that when the little girl's pair of icy bead-like eyes coldly looked at him, it was rather frightening. "Open the door obediently," Arbor said coldly. "Take your lackeys and crawl away." Huang Qishan did not expect that Arbor would really come to the cultivation hall for lessons. Wasn't she the crown princess of the divine land? These people from the upper echelons of society came here just so that they could tell others that they had graduated from the royal school and earned some credits. How could they really come here to attend classes so early in the morning? He still remembered how the crown princess had insulted him. Su Fugue didn't understand the situation, so he better not implicate his brother. Open the door." Huang Qishan kicked his brother's butt. The latter was baffled, and she moved to the door in bewilderment before glancing at Xiaomu again. Hurry and open it. Su Fugue's hand trembled when Huang Qishan shouted, and he hastily withdrew all of the spiritual pressure on the gate. He opened the door and looked at the little stoic leading the way. Boring. Arbor swept them a glance and walked straight to the instructor's resting area. When everyone saw this, they silently lit a candle in their hearts. Chapter 2895. Of course, there were also those who did not understand the situation. They tugged at the sleeves of the people beside them and inquired about Arbor's background. Close the door. Huang Qishan ordered. Su Fugue was about to make a move. Arbor turned around and coldly stared at them. What are you doing? Huang Qishan was stunned. He smiled and said, Crown Princess, we want to have a friendly match with the freshmen. We hope that you won't stop us. What kind of friendly match is this? You're just eyeing the contribution points in our pockets. You're thinking of ways to cheat us. Qi Xianxian pointed out bluntly. Preposterous. Huang Qishan glared at Qi Xianxian. Line up outside. Same rules, if you want to enter, you have to defeat 10 seniors. Arbor retreated and stood in front of one of the seniors. She looked at the other party with a wooden face. I'll challenge you. That senior shook his head like a rattledrum. You can't do that, Crown Princess. What kind of joke was this? This Crown Princess had a huge existence like Sand Scorpion by her side. Him challenging her. Unless his brain was flooded with water. You're a golden branch and jade leaf, we don't dare to challenge you. The man said flatteringly as he took 2 steps back. I don't summon spiritual beasts. Arbor looked at him indifferently. If you can take 3 moves from me, I won't interfere in today's matter. If you can't even take 3 moves, transfer all your contribution points to me. Everyone was dumbstruck. They felt that the scene in front of them was changing rapidly. The plot was changing so fast that it was impossible to guard against it. That person still shook his head like a rattledrum and took a few steps back. No need, Crown Princess. He had a special premonition. Since the little Crown Princess dared to say such words, she must have a card up her sleeve. He would not go up and look for a beating. He had to admit that this brother's 6th sense was very accurate. After retreating a few steps, he hurriedly turned around and retreated to the side, no longer standing among the 10 senior students who were being challenged. Huang Qishan glanced at him coldly but did not say anything. After all, even he didn't dare to challenge this person, let alone the other students. Open the door. She did not care about the others. She knew that Xian and the others could not be stopped outside. Su Fugue obediently opened the white fence and glared at the snickering crowd. Why are you all blocking the entrance? Move aside, move aside, move aside. Not long after Arbor arrived at the teacher's office, Ollie and his men forcibly opened up a path in the crowd for Akir and Mayas to pass through. When Instructor Ma and Instructor Gao of the cultivation hall saw that Arbor had come to ask for leave on the first day of class, their faces unknowingly tensed up. Applying for leave will result in a deduction of 500 contribution points per day. Have you thought about it? Isn't it 50? Arbor pointed at the regulations hanging behind the teachers and said calmly. Instructor Gao, who had been slapped in the face on the spot, calmly raised his hand and rubbed his nose. That's for other people. You are a classmate with an unusual status. If you ask for leave, it must be 500. You're too much of a scam. Although Xiao Mu did not have much desire for contribution points, she was not a sucker. How could she allow someone to deduct 500 points so casually? She was unhappy, and her thin brows knitted together. You should follow the regulations. Not a single point more. Chapter 2896. Instructor Gao's thick brows arched as he said in displeasure, "You're ranked first in terms of contribution points right now. I originally wanted to arrange for you to talk about your cultivation experiences with the students tomorrow. Now that you're taking leave like this, how am I supposed to arrange my work, huh?" On the side, Instructor Ma's mouth twitched as he frantically winked at Instructor Gao. Instructor Gao looked at him speechlessly. "What are you doing? Are your eyes uncomfortable?" "To hell with your uncomfortable eyes." Instructor Ma glanced at Instructor Gao in disdain. He wanted to remind him. On the first day of school, this little stoic did something so out of line. Hadn't it only been 2 days? Why did he want the stoic face to talk about her learning experiences again? There was simply no hope for her to talk about anything with this stoic face of hers. "I don't have any cultivation experiences." The little stoic glanced at the 2 instructors indifferently. "But I can spar with the students one-on-one. If they're willing." No one would be willing, right? Instructor Ma was speechless and secretly rolled his eyes. "All right then, I'll ask them tomorrow." Teacher Gao reached out and stamped her leave request. 500 contribution points will be deducted for a day. Deduct 1,000 points for more than 7 days. Bam! The little stoic slammed the 2 instructors' door shut. She was still fuming when she walked out, her small face brimming with indignation. They were simply too heartless. Wasn't it just asking for leave? They actually had to deduct contribution points. No wonder these students were all so tight on their days. Contribution points were truly earned at a snail's pace and consumed very quickly. When Qi Xianxian and the others saw her walk out of the instructor's office in a huff, they quickly went up to her and asked, "Jojo, why are you so angry? What happened?" "It's nothing." She pulled a long face and couldn't resist saying, "The instructors are all too stingy." Qi Xianxian stifled her laughter. "They made things difficult for you." Arbor harumphed. "If Su Fugue and the others stop you from entering in the future, release your spirit beasts and let them bite you however you like." A tall black shadow suddenly appeared in front of her. Arbor looked up, and the concerned expression on his little face instantly turned cold. "Get out of the way. Chow Chow, I have an important matter that I want to discuss with you in private." Ming Yasi stood ramrod straight in front of Chow Mu with an unyielding attitude. The little stoic was a bit angry at once, and she pulled Qi Xianxian back a step. "Jojo." Ming Yas reached out to grab her wrist. Arbor retracted his hand and flipped it over. His wrist brushed past the back of his hand as if it was boneless, and he quickly retracted it back into his sleeve. Arbor glared angrily at Nayas in front of him and shouted angrily, "Get out of the way. What do I have to say to you?" Ming Yas didn't get angry. He just looked at her indifferently and said, "It's about the marriage contract from 20 years ago. I'm sure you'll be interested to know." "What marriage contract from 20 years ago?" Arbor was puzzled. "Come with me." "Jojo, don't go with him." Qi Xianxian grabbed Arbor's arm and stared guardedly at Ming Yas as he turned around and left. "This guy is tricking you." "Humph, of course I won't go with him." Arbor threw him a cold glance. However, the result of ignoring him was that a marriage contract was posted in front of the dining hall's entrance at noon. The end of the 6th night watch. Broken sleep. Chapter 2897. At first, Arbor didn't know that Ming Yas had done such a good deed at the cafeteria. By the time Qi Xianxian, and the others went over to eat, there was already a large crowd at the entrance of the cafeteria. They were gathered in 2s and 3s, pointing and watching. Seeing Arbor walk over, these people shut their mouths and winked at her with mocking smiles. Arbor was quite baffled. When she went up and saw the marriage contract, she was about to explode in anger. Most importantly, there was a small note floating below the marriage contract. Our dear Xiao Mu's name was impressively written on it. Lu Yu and the others were startled and turned to look at Arbor in unison. Jojo, what's going on? Crazy. Arbor clenched her small fists and tore down the marriage contract and small note. She asked a snickering male student, "Where is Ming Yas?" The male student shrunk his neck and cautiously pointed to the second floor of the cafeteria. Arbor leaped up with a whoosh and directly jumped over the railing on the second floor. She couldn't control the anger that wanted to erupt from her entire body. Like a little lion, the little guy rushed to the door of a private room and kicked the door of the private room flying with a bang. A man in tiger skin suddenly jumped to the middle of the room and shouted in a low voice. Then, he grabbed a stool and smashed it at the door. When the two collided, wood splinters flew everywhere. A watercolored light curtain appeared in the middle, blocking all the wood shavings outside and not contaminating their bodies. Akira immediately jumped up from the stool and glared at Arbor, who had barged in with her beautiful eyes. She shouted angrily, "What are you doing?" Anger flashed in Akira's eyes, and she casually threw a dirt ball straight at Arbor's face. "Akira, stop," Yas shouted coldly. But Akira already couldn't stop. She had thrown the dirt ball, so there was no reason to take it back. That earthen ball smashed towards Xiao Mu's face at an extremely rapid speed. Miss Xiao's expression was abnormally cold and severe. She grasped a circle of water spirit energy in one hand, and the bright, watery spirit energy suddenly enveloped the dirt ball that Akira had thrown. It was as if the earth ball was covered by a transparent water spirit barrier, and the earth ball was completely under the palm of his hand. This kind of water spirit control stunned Akira, and she couldn't help but feel a bit frightened. She had a bad feeling. "Akira, get out of the way!" All eight shouted in alarm. In the blink of an eye, the dirt ball that Akira had thrown was fiercely thrown back at Akira's face. Ah! Akira was so scared that she was as dumb as a wooden chicken. She even forgot to move her feet. She stood upright in the middle of the room and was about to be hit by the dirt ball. A black shadow quickly came to her side, grabbed her collar, and threw her to the side of a stool. Bang! Akira's butt landed heavily on the stool. She howled in pain and grimaced as she looked at Yas. Yas appeared where she had been standing and controlled the dirt ball that Arbor had thrown back with one hand. The dirt ball appeared very smooth and obedient in his hand. It spun around between his slender fingers, and the spirit energy slowly dispersed and was absorbed by his fingers. The man pursed his thin lips tightly and stared fixedly at the little girl in front of him with hawk-like eyes. What a ruthless heart. Chapter 2898. Just now, if he hadn't helped in time, would Akira have been able to keep her life? That was definitely not possible. Akira was merely a level 7 spiritualist who relied on a pile of medicine. She had no chance of winning against the little girl. Moreover, Akira had relied on heavenly earth mithril to barely comprehend the origin of the earth spirit. Her talent naturally couldn't compare to even one of the little girl's fingers. They hadn't seen each other in a long time. This little girl was still so ruthless. She threw dirt balls at people's heads without saying a word. She was clearly aiming to take their lives. Arbor coldly looked at the man with pursed lips in front of her and threw the tattered marriage contract at him. "What is this? Why did you say that?" Ming Yasi looked at her with a spurious smile. "In the morning, I said I wanted to talk to you." So her rejection was met with such harsh treatment? She wasn't a cat or a dog. Why did she have to be present and listen to his nonsense when he said he wanted to talk? Arbor angrily glared at him with her almond-shaped eyes and coldly looked at him. you're courting death. How dare you? Akir sat up straight on the stool and glared at Arbor with red eyes. You're too impudent, Arbor. Shut up. Arbor and Ming Yasi turned around and shouted at her at the same time. Akir looked at the two in shock. It was bad enough that this damned woman Arbor shouted at her, but now even His Highness Yasi was shouting at her like this. Akir felt that her life was very miserable and couldn't help but sob while covering her face. Take Akir out. Ming Yasi pursed his lips, anger and irritation flashing through his hawk-like eyes. Waving his hand, he turned around and ordered Ollie, you guys go out too. What a sin. Ollie glanced at his elder brother and couldn't help but sigh. He stepped forward and pulled Akir up. Let's go, Akir. No, I'm not going out. Don't pull me out. Akir twisted her waist and shouted in exasperation, this woman must have cast some kind of goo on His Highness Yasi. Otherwise, how could this woman gain His Highness Yasi's favor with such a vile attitude? This was completely impossible. The only thing Akir could think of was the goo poison technique used by the people of the Primal Land. Get out. ACI roared again impatiently. He hadn't expected Arbor to arrive so quickly. If he had known, he wouldn't have let the meddlesome Akir stay here and ruin things. Akir, let's go. Ollie helplessly pulled up the writhing Akir and secretly gave her a warning glare. He lowered his voice and said, do you want the Crown Prince to be angry, drive you far away, and never allow you to return? Akir was instantly speechless. She turned her head and glared fiercely at Arbor before reluctantly following Ollie out. However, she wasn't willing to go far. She went to the opposite room and chased the students out. She opened the door and stared at Yas and Arbor. In any case, the door to His Highness Yas's room had been completely destroyed by Arbor. Now that they were sitting opposite, they could see everything clearly. Your explanation, Arbor said bluntly with a cold expression. Yas raised his hand, and a defensive barrier appeared around the two of them, completely isolating them from the outside world. Seeing this, Akir was so angry that she jumped up and scolded with a sour expression, what do they want to do by hiding in the room? Chapter 2899. This damned indecent woman. She's already married, but she still goes around seducing men. Keep your voice down. Alex wished he could cover Akir's mouth. It's fine if you say this in front of me, but you mustn't say this in front of Big Brother. Who couldn't tell what Big Brother had been like all these years? Big Brother simply wouldn't listen to anyone slandering Arbor. Akir's eyes turned red from jealousy. What can I do to deal with her? Akir slammed the table and said angrily, why can a married woman seduce my brother Yas? I must think of a way to kill her. Shut up. Alex couldn't help but roll his eyes speechlessly. You think you can kill Arbor with your strength? With your strength alone, she only needs to lift a finger to crush you. Do you have a bad memory? Alex raised his hand and patted Akir's head. If Big Brother hadn't quickly saved you just now, you would be lying on the ground right now. Even I am not that girl's match, let alone you. Akir fell silent, but her eyes still flickered with intense unwillingness. Knock, knock, knock. Hurried footsteps ran up from downstairs. Where's Jojo? Qi Xianxian saw Akir and Alex and frowned. You must be Yas's sisters-in-law. Where did you take Jojo? How impudent and rude. Akir slammed the table and stood up with a ferocious expression. Without another word, she picked up a dirt ball and threw it at Qi Xuanxuan's face. She didn't manage to hit Arbor just now and almost suffered a loss from her counterattack. Now, she would get back at this woman first. Who told her to be so blind that she dared to shout at her Princess Akir? Bam! Qi Xianxian raised a meaty little fist and aimed it at the dirt ball Akir threw. A bolt of lightning wrapped around her fist and smashed it at the dirt ball. Boom! A square table was placed between the two of them. It flew up and shattered into pieces on the ground. Akir and Qi Xianxian both took 2 steps back at the same time. Duanmu Qing's body swayed and he reached out to block Qi Xuanxuan's back. That Ollie also hurriedly reached out to grab Akir's soft body. Ah! Damn woman, you actually dare to be so disrespectful to this princess. I'll kill you! Akir shrieked. She felt as if her face had dropped to the ground and was being crushed into dregs. Damn it, this girl in front of her, her cultivation level was lower than hers. She could tell at a glance that Qi Xianxian was only a rank 6 spirit master. However, this little 6th rank spiritual master was actually able to receive the earth ball thrown by her, a 7th rank spiritual master. Both of them took 2 steps back at the same time. What did this mean? This meant that although Akir was a level 7 spiritual master, she couldn't even defeat a level 6 spiritual master. Wasn't this deliberately trying to humiliate her? Actually, this logic was obvious. Akir was someone who relied on a pile of medicine to reach her current level. It wasn't easy for her to comprehend level 6 earth spirit through heavenly earth mithril. Naturally, she couldn't be compared to Qi Xianxian, who had reached her current level steadily. Qi Xianxian relied on herself to communicate with nature and comprehend the origin of spiritual thunder. Level 8 spiritual thunder couldn't be compared to level 6 earth spirit. Even though her cultivation level was 1 level lower than Akir's, she still had the power to fight with her. Chapter 2900. It was hard to say who would emerge victorious at the end of the battle. Qi Xianxian looked coldly at the madwoman in front of her who was stamping with rage. Why are the people of Underworld Province acting like lunatics? Where is my Jojo? Where is Jojo? Akir shrieked, "Dao, Dao, kill this audacious woman for me." She actually dared to be disrespectful to Princess Akir. She should taste the consequences. Dao hesitated for less than a second before nodding his head in agreement. In his opinion, Akir was the clan sister that His Highness ACI had brought up from the lower star domain. In terms of closeness, she definitely surpassed the legitimate princesses of Underworld Province. Even if Akir didn't have the title of princess, she was actually a princess. There was nothing wrong with Dao's understanding. After all, for the sake of His Highness Yas and his adoptive father Ahan, the Emperor of the Underworld Province had decided to confer Akir the title of princess in a while. Akir definitely had the right to be arrogant. As Dao thought this, his tiger-skinned skirt fluttered, and he stood in front of Qi Xianxian with his hands on his hips. How dare you be so impudent and rude to our Underworld Province's princess? It's time to teach you a lesson. The muscles on Dao's arm bulged slightly. A water arrow flew towards Qi Xuanxuan's face. Duanmu Qing coldly looked at the water arrow that was flying towards him. He suddenly pulled Qi Xianxian behind him and quickly caught it with his palm. Everyone watched as he caught the water arrow with 2 fingers and it made a clanging sound as it pierced through the air. With a bang, it turned into a mist and disappeared into the air. Dao's expression changed slightly. He angrily glared at Duanmu Qing, who had suddenly come out to mess things up. This young man looked very young, but it was hard to tell what his cultivation level was. In fact, Duanmu Qing's current cultivation level was 1 level higher than Dao's, a level 12 spiritual master. Dao naturally couldn't see Duanmu Qing's cultivation level. Seeing this, Turnbull hurriedly stepped forward to smooth things over. Everyone, please calm down. Qi Xuanxuan's small face was ashen with anger. You saw it. This person wanted to kill me just now. Little Fatty's face darkened as well. Since you're the ones who attacked first, then let's all attack together. Akir shrieked, you're all rebelling. Without hesitation, Qi Xianxian released her golden lion from the spirit beast space. As soon as the golden-haired lion appeared, it filled more than half of the room. Akir was so shocked that she took several steps back and was forced into a corner. You little bitch. Do you think others don't have spirit beasts? Akir shrieked and was about to release her spirit beast. Qi Xianxian pointed at her and said, tear that mouth of hers apart. With a roar, the golden-haired lion leaped forward with a swoosh and clawed at Akir's face. Ah! Akir only felt a gust of wind rush at her. She hurriedly released her spirit beast. It was actually an old turtle. It stood in front of Akir and took a swipe from the golden-haired lion. Clang! A crisp sound was heard. The golden lion felt as if its paw had grabbed onto an iron plate, and it was in pain from the recoil. Ah! Akir released the old turtle to block the attack. However, her body was pushed to the long table by the window by the old turtle. Unfortunately, this long table had already been shattered by the force. Akir pressed on nothing. She staggered and almost hit her head on the wall. Chapter 2901. Seeing this, the golden-furred lion surreptitiously swiped at her again. Akir! Alarmed, Ollie hurriedly came to her rescue, sending out a gust of astral wind. As the golden-furred lion dodged the astral wind, its paw missed its target and only managed to grab a strand of Akir's long hair, completely messing up her elegant and unique hairstyle. Akir was practically mad with anger. She screamed in shock as if she had suffered a great grievance. She said to Ollie with red eyes, Ollie, help me kill this woman in front of me. I'm going to kill her. This damned little slut. Her perfectly fine image of an elegant princess had been completely destroyed by this woman in front of her. What did she look like with her head and face? She didn't have the slightest bit of the demeanor of a princess. She looked like a beggar who had run over from the streets. The hair on her head was all crooked from the lion's claw. Ollie was also a bit angry. You people, don't be so shameless. Did they think their Ming province's royal family was easy to bully? He didn't directly call for the hidden guards to attack them on account of their relationship with Arbor. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a good time. What are you all making a ruckus for? An angry shout traveled in from outside the room. An old man with an angry face strode in and looked around. His gaze landed on the battered and exhausted Akir in the corner. Behind the old man was a group of students who had secretly run up to watch the commotion. They were all looking at them as if they were watching a good show and whispering, wow, they're all going to be in trouble now. It's Consecrated Lu from the discipline hall. Consecrated Lu is very strict. He hates it when people cause trouble at the academy. Arbor didn't know that Qi Xianxian and the others were at odds with Akir's group in order to find her. At this moment, she was coldly looking at Yas, who was talking to himself, expressionlessly. Yas stared at her, feeling a bit upset. He felt that the little girl's stoic face wasn't as cute as her angry look when she had just charged in. This stoic face was really disgusting. When my mother told me about this, the first person I thought of was you. Back then, the person who saved my mother's family was your mother, Long Chuyun. On the surface, this marriage was arranged with the Mu family, but in fact, it was arranged with your mother, that's all you want to say. Arbor interrupted him with a sour face. I'm going to disappoint you. Firstly, I'm already married. Secondly, this marriage contract clearly states that the one who is engaged to you is the eldest daughter of the Mu family, the well-known genius eldest daughter, Mu Roxian. Ming Yassi's face sank. Naturally, it can't be her. To put it nicely, her mother was a second wife. To put it bluntly, she was a concubine. Oh, no. Based on my investigation, when her mother was pregnant with her, she couldn't even be considered Mu Jingfeng's concubine. She could only be considered an outside wife. This marriage contract was signed 20 years ago. The eldest daughter of the first wife mentioned in the marriage contract refers to you. It's this woman, Mu Xian, who snatched your identity and even snatched your destined marriage. Arbor knitted her brows. These words sounded strange. If she was snatching Yas's destined marriage, then she really should thank that eldest daughter of the first wife. Chapter 2902. Thirdly, and also the most important point. Arbor coldly glanced at Ming Yasi. My surname is Chiao. Ming Yasi's heart was stifled by her last sentence. What 1, 2, 3, where did all these reasons come from? They were all just excuses. My Ming province's imperial family will send a marriage proposal to the Mu clan in the name of the great emperor. Ming Yasi looked at the little girl in front of him, his expression indifferent as he said, Arbor, you can't escape. You will definitely become my woman in this lifetime. Ming Yasi took a step forward, suddenly grabbing her small hand. Without any warning, he forcefully pulled her to his side. Without another word, Arbor kicked him with all her might. Her wrist struggled with all her might, but he firmly held it in his palm. Do you see? This is our marriage proposal. Since 20 years ago, you and I were destined to be a pair. 20 years your ass. Arbor twisted her arm, but it was firmly clamped down by his iron-like fingers. The startled swan dagger moved according to her will, flashing away in a flash. The instant it flew out of her conscious, it attacked Ming Yasi's throat. This cunning and ruthless little girl was stabbing at his fatal throat. She wanted to kill him in one blow. Ming Yasi tilted his head and swiftly dodged, dragging the little girl to the window. He recalled the first time they met in Shuang City. This vicious and merciless little fellow had treated him so bluntly. So much so that she didn't treat him as a human at all, using him as a medicine man. He had never understood why this little fellow was so ruthless to him. Later, he figured it out. When they first met outside Shuang City, he attacked the martial uncles and senior sisters by his side without knowing the inside story, almost injuring them. Because of this little fellow had regarded him as an enemy from beginning to end. He firmly grasped her wrist, his gaze fixed on her. Are you still angry with me over the matter from a few years ago? I admit that I was wrong that time. I shouldn't have led Flying Eagle Squad to attack your master and senior sisters by your side. But it's been so many years, can't you forgive me at all? Besides, when I was your medicine man, I took your poison for 3 meals every day. This debt should be enough to repay. Yas dragged the little girl to his side. Why do you always treat me as an enemy? Can't we start over and get along well? Miss Chiao was flustered and exasperated. She stared coldly at the 5 fingers on her arm. Let go. Is this the attitude of someone who wants to get along well? It's the same every time. I have to listen to you for everything. If we don't do as you wish, is that disobeying your superiors? Jojo. Ming Yas closed his eyes in pain. Why can't you let go of your prejudice against me? Do you know how overjoyed I was when I heard about this marriage from my mother? I'm thinking that we are fated after all, aren't we? This fate was already decided 20 years ago. If it weren't for various reasons that caused us to miss each other, you and I would be a legitimate husband and wife now. Arbor looked at the somewhat fanatical look in this person's eyes, and she was inwardly shocked. She never would have thought that this Ming Yas would actually crazily like her. Did she treat him that way back then? What kind of illness did this person have to like her? Thump, 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 thump. Thump. Bang. The defensive barrier that Ming Yas had set up suddenly shattered into pieces. The sixth watch ended. Chapter 2903. The defensive barrier was broken by an external force, and Ming Yasi was the first to bear the brunt of it. A cluster of purple flames flew toward Ming Yasi's head without another word. The moment Ming Yasi dodged, a black figure swiftly arrived beside Arbor. Mo Lian's phoenix eyes darkened. She reached out to grab Jojo by the waist and hugged her as she retreated a few steps. "I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you completely." Mo Lian coldly glanced at Ming Yasi. "No matter how much you fight, everything you do will be in vain. Jojo is my wife. This is a fact that no one can change." Arbor raised her small hand and subconsciously patted Mo Lian's chest. When she turned to look at Ming Yasi, her eyes were filled with annoyance. What a headache. She didn't expect Long Chuyun to cause her a problem with the marriage contract from 20 years ago. She naturally couldn't acknowledge it now. Besides, what she said before was right. Her name wasn't written on the marriage contract at all. It was completely Ming Yasi's own wishful thinking. Ming Yasi smiled at them, but there was a hint of strangeness in his smile. "This marriage contract is bound by the laws of heaven and earth. If there's a restriction, it should be on you and Mu Rochuan," Arbor said irritably. She wasn't some nuisance of the Mu family's eldest miss. Ming Yasi stared at her with a dark gaze. "Jojo, you will change your mind. Your Mu family can't bear the consequences of deceiving Ming Province's imperial family." Arbor was furious. If Mo Lian wasn't hugging her, the little fellow would have run over and punched him again, walking right into the trap. "Who deceived Ming Province's imperial family?" "Your Mu family," Ming Yasi said resolutely. "Say, if my imperial father finds out that the Mu family actually used a woman born from an outside to fob me off, won't he be so angry that he'll vent his anger on the entire Mu family?" He carefully looked at Arbor's small face. However, her cold and angry expression gradually calmed down. Ming Yasi was going to find trouble with the Mu family. Then, let him go and find it. Anyway, she did not have much to do with the Mu family. The one who should be having a headache should be Mu Jingfeng. "Go ahead," Arbor growled at him angrily. Furious to the extreme, Yas actually flew over to Arbor. However, before his fingers could touch her wrist, Mo Lian blocked them with one hand. Courting death. Prince Mo forcefully swatted Ming Yas's hand away. Without any warning, a slender black longsword stabbed towards Ming Yas's chest. A hint of anger flashed across Nether Yasi's face. He still remembered how this person beat him up in Shuang City a few years ago. Now that the old and new grudges were added together, Ming Yasi couldn't wait for Mo Lian to die right now. When Mo Lian's Raven Moon sword was right in front of his eyes, Ming Yasi blocked it with his earth shield. Following that, Mo Lian's purple flames covered the sky and covered the earth. Like a meteor shower, they swept towards Ming Yasi. Miss Chow opened her small mouth, but she didn't have time to say anything. Instead, she saw two black figures fly out in front of her with a whoosh. The collision of the two people's power was like a dazzling light that suddenly lit up the entire dining hall downstairs. Arbor only saw the two people suddenly rush out of the second-floor window. Following that, the window was flattened by the two people's power, and rubble tumbled down. Inexplicable. Arbor angrily cursed in her heart. She got up to have lunch properly, but in the end, she actually encountered this kind of thing. This Ming Yasi was really hateful. "Don't wait for me, I'll say it's over when I'm done. This week, I've been updating at this time." Chapter 2904. Bam! The onlookers downstairs were almost scared to death. What kind of trouble had they gotten themselves into? I came here for lunch out of the blue, but I ended up encountering two princes fighting each other without knowing the reason. Everyone rushed out of the cafeteria like a swarm of bees. Wasn't this a joke? Her Highness Lien's indiscriminate purple fire had almost scared them to the point of peeing their pants. Wherever it was lit, it would burn, and wherever it was burned, it would turn into ashes. How was he supposed to deal with this? Besides running, they could only run, 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 run. Arbor also hurriedly jumped down from the second-floor window and waved at Mo Lien. Lien. Mo Lien's Raven Moon sword was covered in layers of fire spirits. She slashed along with the sword intent and attacked continuously, not giving Ming Yas any time to think about how to counterattack. The speed at which she changed her moves was shockingly fast. All the onlookers only felt that their parents had given them two eyes, which were not enough at all. They only knew that Her Highness Lien had already changed her moves countless times in the instant she attacked. Every move was fatal and aimed at Ming Yas's weak spot. In the end, His Highness Yas was forced into a difficult situation by this person. Stop! A shout came from outside the crowd. Everyone couldn't help but shrink their necks. He's here, High Official Lu is here. High Official Lu of the Discipline Hall was the most impartial and impartial. He didn't give anyone face. What he hated the most was people causing trouble in the royal school. It seemed like this matter had really gotten out of hand. Even the old man had been invited over. High Official Lu's face was tense as he took heavy steps and hurried to the front of the few people. His dignified gaze circled around Ming Yas and Mo Lien, as if he wanted to roar at the sky. What was going on? He had just dealt with a group of students who were causing trouble and a few more came right after. The two people in front of him, whether it was Her Highness Mo Lien from the Divine Continent or His Highness Yas from the Underworld region, they were not people to be trifled with. How did he end up in such a situation? Consecrator Lu did his best to keep a straight face. He glanced at Ming Yas with a heavy expression, then glanced at Mo Lien. Those who cause trouble in the academy will be dealt with according to the academy's rules. The situation between the two of you is especially serious. Under Prince Mo's extremely pressuring gaze, Officer Lu hurriedly sped up his speech. They gathered a crowd to fight, and even destroyed many things in the cafeteria. According to the academy's rules, if you are to be punished, you follow me. Consecrator Lu said with an old face. He quickly turned around, mainly because he didn't want to make a fool of himself in front of the students. Inexplicably, under the pressure of Crown Prince Lien's terrifying gaze, he felt like he couldn't continue. When Arbor heard the old man say that he was going to punish Mo Lien, he quickly followed him. When they arrived at the discipline hall that the old man had mentioned, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded as soon as they walked through the door. Qi Xianxian and the others were all there. Jojo. Seeing that Arbor was safe and sound, Qi Xianxian and the others heaved a sigh of relief. It was just that their current appearance was rather disheveled. Hundreds of wooden stakes with sharp blades had been set up in the discipline hall's courtyard. Qi Xianxian and the others had activated their defensive spiritual shields and were standing on the stakes. The sharp blades were pointed at their feet. As long as they lost their balance and fell down, they would definitely suffer a lot. 2 hours. Consecrator Lu threw down these words, as if he was about to flee in defeat. Chapter 2905. Sigh, he actually didn't want it to be like this. Just like back then, he also wanted to put on the airs of a commandment hall venerable and give Ming Yasi and His Highness Mo Lien a good dressing down. However, Mo Lien and Ming Yasi's gazes were truly enough to send chills down one's spine. Rather than saying that he was scared off by their statuses, it was more accurate to say that he was forced to retreat by their auras. In any case, he had maintained the discipline hall's dignity in front of all the students. Since they were already at their destination, he could just casually punish them. After Consecrator Lu fled, Qi Xianxian, who was on the wooden stake, couldn't help but cry out, I chow chow. We are truly in the same boat. Come on up and stand on the wooden stake next to me. If we are closer, we can still talk. Akir, who was already exhausted, couldn't help but curse indignantly, lunatic. Wasn't she a lunatic? She was punished by Pundit Lu to stand on a sharp knife for 4 hours. Because they didn't want to step on a sharp knife, everyone could only use their maximum spirit power to rise into the air and create a spirit power barrier to prevent themselves from falling and getting stabbed by the knives. However, more than an hour had already passed, and Qi Xianxian was still talking cheerfully and wittily, as if she didn't feel tired at all. What was even more exaggerated was that she didn't even use a bit of spirit power to defend her legs. She wasn't afraid that she would fall from exhaustion into a sea of knives and wear her legs out. The other people beside Qi Xianxian also had the same carefree appearance. There wasn't even a bead of sweat on their foreheads. They truly looked too relaxed and didn't look like people who had just been punished for more than an hour. Looking at her miserable dog-tired appearance, Akira couldn't help but want to howl at the sky. Jojo, come quickly. Qi Xianxian waved her small hand at Arbor and said with a smile. Hurry over and accompany her. She was about to die from boredom standing on this wooden stake alone. Arbor looked at her expressionlessly. Thank you, but I don't need to be punished. Her words were a little heart-wrenching. All of her teammates who were standing on the wooden stakes turned to look at her. Prince Mo couldn't help but feel helpless. He flew to the top of the pile and hovered there. He looked down at Arbor and winked. Don't you want to see the view up there? Arbor shook his head. He took a stool and sat down in the courtyard of the discipline hall. What Consecrator Lu meant was that after standing for 2 hours, they could go back to their own homes. However, looking at Akira's miserable appearance, it was clear that she didn't know that Qi Xianxian and the others were all people with flying talismans. No matter how long they had to stand on the wooden stakes, it didn't affect the consumption of their spiritual energy. So, it was really quite a scam. An hour later, Qi Xianxian and the others quietly put away their flying talismans and willingly stayed on top of the wooden stakes, consuming their spirit energy. The main thing was that it was fine if he was lazy for a while, but he still had to cultivate properly. 2 hours later, Consecrator Lu of the Discipline Hall came to inspect everyone's results. When he saw everyone persevering while drenched in sweat, he nodded inwardly. His gaze swept across the room and finally stopped on the little stoic. Why are you here? My husband is being punished, so I naturally have to accompany him, Arbor said with a glance. Chapter 2906. Consecrator Lu snorted. This old man heard that you've only attended the first day of class and you've already taken a few days off. When Arbor heard this, she immediately looked at him warily. What are you trying to say? His next words couldn't be, since you're so free, go stand on the knife pile for a while. What a joke. She didn't want to stand there in the cold wind with nothing to do. Pundit Lu chuckled dryly and turned to look at her. Today's matter should be caused by you, that's right, Pundit Lu. Akir caught her breath and quickly said, you can't favor one and discriminate against the other. How can you just punish us? Punish her. Punish her. Arbor glanced at her. She only vaguely knew that this woman was someone who followed Ming Yas and Ollie around all year round. She wasn't familiar with her, so why did she jump out at this time to annoy others? Arbor glanced at Pundit Lu and turned to leave without waiting for him to speak. She even waved her small hand as she walked. I'm in a hurry to go out. If you have anything to say, come back first. Pundit Lu was a little dumbfounded. This was the first time he saw a little girl who dared to put off their discipline hall like this. Mo Lien and the others were overjoyed. They turned and hurried to catch up with the little girl. The group of people left in less than 2 minutes. In the large courtyard, only the people from Mingzhou were left looking at each other coldly. Ming Yas unconsciously clenched his fists. He saw very clearly that when the little girl left, she didn't even glance at him. He knew that the little girl didn't like him, but he had already said that. The marriage contract from 20 years ago clearly stated that he was engaged to her. But why was she always unwilling to calm down and listen to him? Arbor didn't care about what Ming Yas was thinking. That night, she packed her things. The next morning, she and her husband took Qin Qi and Lu Zheng across the east side of north-facing Great Forest and headed for Rosy Clouds Peak. Qin Qi and Lu Zheng, who had been purchasing daily necessities for a day, felt like they were being ravaged by the little girl. But the little girl was in a surprisingly good mood. Ever since the troublesome matter of the engagement 20 years ago. That night, the two of them came up with a plan on how to deal with Dark Yas's next move. Both of them deeply agreed with Duan Yu's evaluation of Ming Yasi is a bit neurotic. The academy probably wouldn't be too peaceful today. That fellow Minya was jumping up and down. He definitely wouldn't let that marriage contract go so easily. Therefore, today, the two of them left the chaotic royal school in a rather good mood. A snow-white silver wolf carried the young couple towards the eastern entrance of the north-gazing Great Forest. Qin Qi sighed along the way. I haven't been able to go back for so many years. I remember that there used to be a sizable village at the foot of Red Cloud Peak. Sigh, I don't know if there are any left. Arbor didn't listen to them. The two of them chatted along the way and didn't really respond. On the other hand, Mo Lien was quite interested in conversation and would occasionally exchange a few words with Qin Qi and Lu Zheng. The roars of ferocious beasts could be heard from time to time in north-facing Great Forest. Mo Lien, Qin Qi, and the others were all above the transcendent divine realm, so they naturally didn't care about these wild beasts in the forest. I remember that there used to be a transportation formation here. Lu Zheng picked up a two-pronged branch and poked at the nearby bushes. Chapter 2907. A gray-eared rabbit suddenly burrowed out of the thicket, causing Lu Zheng to be inexplicably vigilant. When he saw that it was a rabbit that was completely harmless, Lu Zheng's eyes involuntarily lit up. He walked forward and condensed a rock from the earth spirit, which then landed on that gray-eared rabbit's head. Picking up the dead rabbit, Lu Zheng excitedly shouted, "Roast meat for lunch." It was still early before noon. Arbor couldn't help but facepalm. Not only were these two old urchins chattering like sparrows the entire way, but they also especially liked to enjoy good food. This was probably the after-effect of doing things to themselves for several decades. Lu Zheng chuckled as he followed behind Arbor and the others with the rabbit in his hand. Let's hunt a few more game later and roast them all for lunch. Sigh, I don't know how many years it's been since I've had a good roast meat. Qin Qi also looked rather rueful when he mentioned this. Arbor involuntarily glanced at them. Then I'll let you guys have a taste of Sir Jojo's culinary skills in a bit. Many thanks, second faction master. The two fellows joyfully cupped their hands at her in unison. Only Prince Mo, who knew the truth, twitched his lips slightly. To be honest, his Xiao Bao's culinary skills really weren't that great. When Jojo said she wanted to cook, insiders like him and Duan Yu didn't have much hope in her. Those who didn't know, like Lu Zheng and Qin Qi, were naturally convinced after being tricked. Xiao Mu nodded her small head in all seriousness. She then paced forward to lead the way with her small claws behind her back. Mo Lien's lips secretly curled up. She turned to look at Qin Qi and Lu Zheng, who were full of anticipation, and silently lowered her eyes. The two elders followed behind Xiao Qiao, and while walking, they kept flattering her. The second-generation sect leader is really amazing. Beautiful on the outside, intelligent on the inside, graceful and magnanimous. I think it's rare to find someone as perfect as our second faction master in this world. Mo Lian deeply agreed with this statement. However, Arbor couldn't help but blush as he listened to the two old men's bragging. Beautiful and intelligent. Her. Graceful and magnanimous, she. It didn't feel like it. The four of them were rushing towards the eastern exit when they vaguely heard someone's cries for help being carried by the wind. Judging from the direction of the sound, it seemed to be coming from the west. Arbor and Mo Lian weren't nosy people. Usually, when they saw trouble, they couldn't wait to avoid it. Why would they take a detour to watch the show? The two of them walked forward hand in hand. However, from the sound of the rolling wheels, it seemed that the two carriages that were calling for help were heading in their direction. It can't be, right? The two of them glanced at each other at the same time and signaled Qin Qi and Lu Xing behind them with their eyes. The four of them leaped onto the tree one after another. It was also at that moment that a small carriage that was shuttling through the forest was heading towards them. A mighty and domineering red wolf was pulling the carriage. It was a full 2 heads taller than the body of the carriage. The carriage looked extremely small, probably only allowing 2 people to sit in it. However, its appearance was simple with a hint of low-key luxury. Even the luminous pearls hanging on the window were almost the size of 2 fists. Was the local tyrant in danger? This thought flashed through Arbor's mind and his eyes couldn't help but flash. Not long after the carriage sped to their tree, it was surrounded by several strong men in black. Too sleepy, I slept even more after waking up. Chapter 2908. Thus, Mo Lian and Qiao Mu surreptitiously burrowed into the foliage of the forest, trying their best to conceal their figures. The two of them had the best vantage point, looking down to watch the show. They saw a woman in her early 40s fly out of the small carriage, 2 daggers flying in front of her. In less than a moment, the 2 men who had been chasing them were slit their throats and sent to the sky. That woman was full of hostility, whistling from her mouth. Behind the carriage, several people with red headscarves appeared. They looked like secret guards. And the coachman who had been sitting in the carriage had already jumped down from the shaft of the carriage at this time, summoning a long dagger from his consciousness, charging towards the black-clothed people surrounding them to attack. Those black-clothed people were clearly not to be trifled with. They were well-trained, nimble, and had great teamwork with each other. Even if 2 of them died at the hands of the woman, there would soon be people to replace them, not affecting the operation of this large encirclement formation at all. The 2 sides fought for about 10 minutes, neither side gaining an advantage over the other. But there were many black-clothed people, as if there was an endless stream. If this continued, no matter how strong the coachman and the woman were, they would still be defeated. Arbor could see clearly from the top of the tree, pursing her lips, looking up at Prince Mo. Prince Mo naturally saw a hint of inquiry in her eyes. Do you want to go down and help? It was just a small matter. Moreover, she looked down on a large group of people surrounding and beating up a woman. Prince Mo winked at her, the meaning couldn't be clearer. Wife, it's up to you. Arbor grinned at him. Just as she was about to jump down to help, she suddenly saw a man who seemed to be the leader jump out from behind the black-clothed people. He had completely wrapped himself up, only revealing 2 small eyes that were staring at the woman with her back facing him. A poisoned arrow suddenly shot towards the woman's back. In the blink of an eye, the woman seemed to have sensed something and quickly dodged to the side. She then used her spiritual power to wrap around the poisonous arrow and quickly threw it to the side. In this gap, the black-clothed leader jumped onto the back of the small carriage and suddenly slapped down on the carriage's hood. The woman's eyes were about to split open as she roared, and the attacks in her hands became even fiercer. In less than a second after the black-clothed leader jumped into the carriage, he carried out a round object wrapped in grey cloth. He whistled, and all the men in black quickly gathered around him, blocking off the red scarf secret guards that were attacking them. They protected the leader and quickly retreated into the depths of the forest. They advanced and retreated in an orderly manner, and they cooperated with each other very well. It was simply impossible for others to intervene. The middle-aged woman was furious when she saw this. She fought off the two men in black with all her might and rushed to the front of the squad leader. She reached out her hand to grab the grey cloth package in his arms. Bang! Bang bang! The two people quickly exchanged 3 palms, and the grey cloth package sank down. The grey cloth on top of the package slid down, and unexpectedly, half of a small bald head was exposed. Arbor, who had originally wanted to attack, saw this and her almond eyes suddenly widened. With a whoosh, she jumped down from the tree. Mo Lien followed behind her, and with a wave of her sleeve, she sent the startled black-clothed men flying. Bang! Several people fell to the ground, and before they could react, the Black Moon Sword's light flashed, taking their lives. Chapter 2909. The black-clothed leader's hand paused. He raised his head and saw a slender figure like a fleeting shadow. With a whoosh, the figure leaped in front of him. The little girl stretched out her hand without saying a word. Water spirit ice condensed into a sword and went straight for his neck. This extremely ruthless style made the black-clothed leader panic for a moment, and he couldn't help but shiver all over. Clang! The black-clothed squad leader reflexively raised the saber in his hand to block Xiao Mu's long sword that she had condensed into ice. When the snow-white ice crystals came into contact with the blazing flames on the squad leader's saber, not only did they not show any signs of being extinguished, they even emitted a cold aura outwards. On the contrary, the blazing fire that covered the saber of the squad leader was slightly weaker, as if it was about to be extinguished. The black-clothed leader was horrified and blurted out, "Who are you?" The little girl looked 16 or 17, but her attack was deadly. Of course, in Shenzhou, you couldn't underestimate any child who looked very young. Because who knew if this child was a centuries-old monster pretending to be young? However, Xiao Mu simply ignored him. She flicked her long sword, which had condensed water into ice, over, drawing out several beautiful sword flowers as she stabbed towards the black-clothed squad leader's chest. The leader held a long grey bag in one hand. Even if he was in his prime, he might not be the little girl's opponent, let alone fighting with Arbor with one hand. Arbor stretched out her hand and slapped. Spiritual power vibrated out and knocked the man's knife out of his right hand. It fell to the ground with a clang. The leader panicked for a moment and turned to run with the grey bag. But when he lifted his foot, he felt his legs go soft. The next moment, he knelt on the ground and spat out 2 mouthfuls of black blood. He lowered his head and saw that the wound caused by the little girl's ice sword was bleeding black blood. Judging from the abnormal color, he must have been poisoned by the other party's attack. The leader trembled all over. Before he could even shout out, he was kicked to the ground by the little girl. Xiao Mu didn't allow for an explanation and snatched the grey cloth bundle from the man's arms. Her slender fingers gently flipped open the grey cloth bag, revealing a jade-like and adorable little face that looked like a pink dumpling. Wasn't the little monk Kong Kong the little kid with a jade face and red lips? As Xiao Mu gazed at the sleeping little monk, her heart inexplicably sank with a thump. The little monk was here. Then what about her family on Seekong Planet? Could it be that some powerful enemy entered Seekong Planet and took Kong Kong from her family? Her heart swayed up and down. When she thought about what might have happened to Wei Ziqin and the others on Seacombe Planet, she exuded a cold aura and felt tormented. Arbor raised her hand and pushed a few acupoints on Kong Kong's body. Seeing that he didn't move, her heart sank. At this time, Mo Lien had already taken care of that group of black-clothed men. Her figure flashed and she arrived beside Arbor. Jojo. He also saw the little monk's condition at a glance and couldn't help but frown. What's wrong with him? Someone probably fed him a sleeping pill. Arbor looked suspiciously at the woman and coachman. The more she looked at them, the more suspicious she felt. Who are you? Arbor's gaze was sharp. Why were they driving that carriage and fleeing with Kong Kong in the great forest facing north? Chapter 29:10. Greetings to Your Highness the Crown Prince. Greetings to the Crown Princess. The two simultaneously bowed to Prince Mo and Arbor, clearly recognizing them. Arbor didn't let down his guard, his scrutinizing gaze moving back and forth between the two. Who are you people? Why did you kidnap Kong Kong? Crown Princess misunderstands. The woman hastily waved her hand and said, We husband and wife are Great Elder Kongin's personal guards. We were ordered to go to Seacombe Planet to pick up Kong Kong. Zhu Fan and his wife expressed that they didn't understand why their master suddenly couldn't think straight and ran off to become a monk for so many years. How could their master not think straight to do such a willful thing? Arbor silently glanced at them. Do you have any proof? Empty words. Just because they said they were Kongin's guards, it was true. Arbor's eyes were clearly suppressing some doubt and disbelief. Seeing this, Zhu Sanyang hastily reached into her pocket and took out a token, respectfully handing it to Prince Mo. Prince Mo only glanced at it absent-mindedly before turning to Arbor and nodding slightly. It's the head elder's token. Arbor's expression finally relaxed as he glanced at them. When you went to pick up Kong Kong, did my family say anything? Replying to the Crown Princess, because of the problem at the passageway, we were on a tight schedule. Picking up Kong Kong went smoothly, and after we produced proof, Madame Chiao nodded in agreement. It's just that Madame Chiao looked a little reluctant to part with Kong Kong and was even more concerned about you, Crown Princess. Arbor silently nodded. Mother naturally couldn't bear to part with Kong Kong. She'd raised Kong Kong for a while, and Kong Kong was clever and adorable. She was also usually very silly and adorable. Mother must be very depressed now that the family suddenly lost a happy fruit. Arbor reached out to stroke Kong Kong's little head, his gaze indifferently looking at Zhu Sanyang and her husband. Is everything well in my family? Before this subordinate left, everything was fine in your residence. Arbor let out a sigh of relief. The inexplicable tension he felt when he saw Kong Kong seemed to have dissipated a lot. However, for some reason, there seemed to be a shadow lingering at the bottom of his heart. It was as if that wisp of bad premonition could not fade away. Was it you who gave Kong Kong the sleeping pill? Arbor's face looked very ugly. Zhu Sanyang's face revealed an awkward expression as she hurriedly explained, Kong Kong has been rather noisy along the way. The child didn't want to leave Wei Ziqin's side and thought about running away every day. If this continued, Zhu Sanyang and her husband were worried that they would lose the child and not be able to answer to Great Elder Kong Yin. They had no choice but to do this. Moreover, the couple didn't have any children, so they didn't have much experience in raising children. How could they have the patience to fight a battle of wits with a little brat? Arbor glanced at them indifferently. Of course, she knew that it was impossible for two strangers to treat Kong Kong well without any compensation. However, she didn't like these two people very much either. The little stoic said with a sullen face, this sleeping pill's dosage is too high. It's not good for his small body. The couple was even more embarrassed now. The Crown Princess was blaming them for not taking good care of the little monk Kong Kong. Crown Princess, please forgive us. Zhu Sanyang was someone who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. She hastily cupped her hands and bowed. It was us husband and wife who didn't think things through. Chapter 29:11. Arbor glanced at them indifferently before picking up the little monk and turning to leave. Zhu Sanyang couldn't help but feel anxious, and she hurriedly said, Crown Princess, we still need to bring this little monk Kong Kong back for Great Elder Kong Yin to look over. The little monk wasn't an object, so why bring him back for Kong Yin to look over? If these two didn't know how to take care of a child, then don't take care of him. They were simply too much. Arbor glanced at them exasperatedly. Go back and tell Great Elder that he's with me. Back then, it was your elder who directly handed him over to me. Even if I have to return him, I have to do it personally. Arbor bluntly retorted the two. Kong Yin, that darn baldy, was really too unreliable. He didn't go to Seacone Planet to take care of the little monk himself, but sent two people who had no patience for children to take care of him. This sleeping pill naturally had a time limit, and the little monk probably hadn't been following them for just a day or two. They'd been feeding the little monk sleeping pills the entire time. How could the child's body take it? The more she thought about it, the angrier Arbor became, and her gaze toward the couple became increasingly unfriendly. Why aren't you leaving? The little fellow shouted impatiently. Did she want to continue being rebuked, or did she want to be rebuked? Zhu Sanyang and her husband rubbed their noses, knowing that they were in the wrong. They hurriedly cupped their hands and said, Yes, Crown Princess. Then we'll go back and reply to Great Elder. Arbor sneered. You can reply however you like. Her gaze had already turned cold. Zhu Sanyang and her husband had been in the pugilistic world for many years, so how could they not understand other people's expressions? Although the little girl's realm wasn't as high as theirs, her status was much higher than theirs. Glancing at His Highness the Crown Prince, who didn't look too good, Zhu Sanyang promptly cupped her hands at the two people. She very perceptively tugged at her husband Zhu Fan's hand and pulled him to leave together. If they stayed any longer, who knew if the little Crown Princess would flare up at them on the spot? Arbor took a deep breath. Seeing that the two people had already turned to leave, she wrapped the gray cloth around the little monk's chubby body and carried him to a nearby tree. Is this drowsiness pill very difficult to cure? Wait for me. Xiao Mu's figure flashed into Paradise Planet. With a cold stoic face, she picked some medicinal herbs that she needed from Paradise Planet's 100-herb garden. Soon, he refined an antidote and came out of the peach garden. In the blink of an eye, Arbor came back with an antidote. He squatted under the tree and stuffed the antidote into the little monk's mouth. He then stroked the little monk's small body and helped him swallow the pill. After a short moment, the small monk's long eyelashes fluttered. Then, he slowly opened his eyes with a vacant look on his face. The first thing he saw was Arbor's stoic face. Then, he saw the equally expressionless Mo Lien beside him. Benefactress. Your bandit husband actually entered this little monk's dream. Hurry up and chase him out. The small monk opened his mouth and said. Mo Lien's handsome face completely darkened. Who's the bandit? Explain clearly. Mo Lien stared at the small monk with a spurious smile and said word by word. Hey, why did this feel so real? The small monk reflexively pinched the back of his hand and muttered to himself, it doesn't hurt. As expected, I'm dreaming. Arbor, you pinched my hand, the little stoic expressionlessly said. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.